registrando, non stavo registrando. Ha ripreso a parlare questo tizio e sta continuando a fare analisi statistica. Scusate per il VOD, non stavo registrando. Niente di che, non ci siamo persi nulla.
2,500
Ora sta comparando i follower.
And then you move down to Gal Gadot with 37 million Instagram followers compared to her 3.8 million. And the 2.3 million Twitter followers compared to Ms. Heard's 142,000. And you can then even go down to Zendaya with 65.9 million and 17.2 million Twitter followers. What this is telling me is really, more people are interested in Ms. Gadot and Zendaya and even Mr. Momoa than Ms. Heard on social media. It just tells me a lot of people are interested in these actors as opposed to Ms. Heard, more of a following. Q scores, well-liked, less disliked. So it kind of fits into the analysis of determining whether or not these alleged comparable actors are actually comparable.
Based on your expertise, what are your overall opinions about Ms. Arnold's analysis of the so-called comparable actors?
Yes, again, it appears that she's abandoned this approach, and I agree with that. I feel that, through the Q-score analysis and the social media analysis, that they're just not comparable.
Tom, we can take that one down. Mr. Bagna, based on all the analysis you did in this case, what are your overall opinions?
Yes, my overall opinions are that Mr. Schnell failed to prove any causal connection with the Waldman statements and the search or the hashtag activity, those spikes as it relates to Twitter. There's no causal connection there. My second opinion is, based on my social media and Q-score analysis, Ms. Arnold's alleged comparable actors are not comparable. And then third, Ms. Arnold and Mr. Schnell both failed to prove any causation as it relates to the Waldman statements causing economic harm to Ms. Heard. So, as a damages expert, which Ms. Arnold is, you need to take into consideration causation before you can calculate damages. You look at damages and you look at this allegedly damaging event, and not only do you have to prove that 100%
Si può usare, ma lo tengo staccato per queste cose.
These Waldman statements, she didn't even consider COVID. It happened at the same time. A lot of actors probably made a lot less money because of COVID. Maybe films didn't get made. And, when you do an analysis of damages, you prove causation, but you also have to look at everything else that might have caused this alleged economic harm. And she didn't look into any of that. She didn't even know what causation was. So I don't think damages is an appropriate approach in this case.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
In realtà qua stanno dimostrando neanche che la perdita di popolarità, qua stanno dimostrando che la popolarità non c'è mai stata, Gennaro. È ben diverso.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bagna.
Hi.
Yeah, you're not a damages expert, correct?
I am a damages expert, but not providing any quantitative damages opinions in this case.
In this case, okay. And is it your testimony that only if a person repeats the Waldman-Depp statements could they be related to the defamation?
Manuz.
Say that one more time.
Are you saying that a person literally has to repeat the Waldman-Depp statements in a tweet?
Ma era anche lei dentro il happening, Pino?
No, if you looked at my analysis, I did pick the three themes as it relates to the tweets, and I analyzed those themes, and I came up with 5 examples.
Mi fai un Google Trend incrociato col happening?
And you ran searches for, quote, abuse hoax, sexual violence hoax, and fake sexual violence. And you ran all those in quotes, correct?
I did.
So only if a person used a tweet with those words in that order and with that spacing would they hit on your searches, correct?
Quando è stato, ragazzi? Quando è stato quella roba lì?
Yeah, so I used them in quotes because, hoax could be used in many other contexts. So I wanted to make sure
ditemi solo quando è
I was
stato.
fitting my search with the theme of the Waldman statements.
So if someone tweeted misheard faked sexual violence, that wouldn't appear in your searches, correct? Faked with an ED.
It would not.
Okay. And if they use 2 spaces between abuse and hoax, that wouldn't fit in your search.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you, and a tweet can only be 280 characters, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So certain of the Waldman-Depp
Se qualcuno di voi riesce a dirmelo
a
gentilmente
person could
quando è
not
successo.
tweet the whole thing in one tweet, correct? The whole statement in one tweet,
The Waldman statements?
correct?
No, you could not
Okay.
tweet those entire quotes.
Did you make any determination if there was an online bullying campaign against Mr. Depp after Ms. Heard's op-ed?
I didn't look into any online bullying campaign for Ms. Heard nor Mr. Depp.
Did you determine if there were tweets harassing Mr. Depp that quoted
2014.
No, my assignment was to determine if the Waldman statements were part of the tweets that Mr. Schnell provided. I was rebutting him.
And in your analysis of when you testified before, you never looked to see if the op-ed was quoted anywhere, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
All right, questions withdrawn. Next question.
Now, you have no objection to Ms. Arnold's use of comparables, correct? Just the use of comparables in general.
I listened to her testimony and my understanding that she abandoned that approach. But as it relates to my testimony today, my opinion was related to those specific alleged comparable actors, that they were not comparable.
You're not offering an opinion as to who the appropriate comparables should be to Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you testified just before about the Q scores of Ms. Heard and the comparables. That was Plaintiff's Exhibit 1296, correct?
I don't know what 1296 means.
Okay. The demonstrative in front of you.
Mine? Yes, that's correct.
And you said that those were all for the winter of 2019?
I said Ms. Heard's were from the winter of 2019.
Because isn't it true that none of the rest of these people were from the winter of 2019, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In fact, Mr. Momoa's was from the summer of 2020?
That's correct. Not all alleged comparable actors had Q scores for that date. What was important for me is to get Ms. Heard's Q scores right after Aquaman, but before the Waldman statements.
So you weren't comparing apples to apples, correct?
I wouldn't say that. I'm saying that it's not the exact same years.
Well, so in the winter of 2019, that Q score comes out. That the field work dates for that is from January 22nd, 2019 to February 7th, 2019, correct?
That is correct.
So that would be so the field work would be starting almost immediately after Aquaman just came out, correct?
Yeah, in her Star is Born moment, yes.
You'd agree that for the winter of 2020, where you took Jason Momoa's Q score, would have more time to account for the rise in popularity of the film Aquaman, correct?
Well, actually, if I use Miss Arnold's suggestion, the celebrities tend to have, the celebrity moment right after they have their breakout film. So I disagree with that. I think maybe his Q scores could be lower as it relates to when I use them.
You'd agree that for the winter of 2020, Mr. Momoa's Q score would have more time to account for the rise in popularity of the film Aquaman?
I don't know if it accounts for the rise of popularity. Again, using Miss Arnold's words, usually a Q score will be the highest right after the film, like I did measure Miss Heard.
All right. Do you show? Yeah. All right. Thank you.
If you look on page 177 of your deposition transcript, you see that?
I don't see a page. Is that what you handed me?
You don't see page 177? At the 4 pages? 4 pages per?
Oh, yes, thank you.
And I asked you at lines 6 through 10, you'd agree that for the winter of 2020, Jason Momoa's Q-score would have more time to account for the rise of popularity in the film Aquaman, and you answered yes.
At that time, as I am a rebuttal expert to Ms. Arnold, based on her testimony, I've learned something new from her.
Okay. You didn't look at Ms. Heard's Q-score for summer of 2020, correct?
She doesn't have any.
And Ms. De Armas had a lower familiarity score than Ms. Heard, correct?
If I don't have that in front of me, but if you're saying that, yes.
Okay. And Ms. De Armas's career trajectory has gone up since the summer of 2020, correct?
I don't know. I didn't analyze her career trajectory.
Okay. Could you put up plaintiff's trial exhibit 1297? That was the demonstrative.
Con chi, Zambi?
Ms. De Armas has less Instagram followers than Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Heard has more than double the Instagram followers of Ms. De Armas, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it true that you get more social media followers the longer you're on social media?
Not necessarily. It doesn't work that way. It depends on many other factors.
So Ms. De Armas had a lower familiarity score and less Instagram followers, yet your testimony is that she would not be a proper comparable to Ms. Heard?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're not offering a different set of people who should be comparables, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. You can take that down. Now, you understand that Mr. Waldman has been banned from Twitter for life for harassing Amber Heard, correct?
Non per quello. No.
I don't know that.
No, non è vero.
And you understand that Mr. Waldman appealed the decision to Twitter and they have confirmed his ban for life?
Ma non gli hanno detto il perché?
May we approach on this one?
Okay, sure.
Non gli hanno detto perché? Non è vero. Come è finita la prima parte? Guarda, sulla sinistra sull'altro tavolo stanno sanguinando. Mirko, hanno chiesto il respawn.
Negative hashtags relating to Ms. Heard occurred between April 1st, 2020 and
Mirko,
June 15th,
gli avvocati di Amber stanno chiedendo il redeploy al FOB più vicino.
And you would agree that 5 of the 6 highest spikes of the negative hashtags were after the Depp Waldman statements, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And where you talked about the February 2020 spike, and the 65%, by the way, even includes the February 2020 spike of tweets, correct?
That's correct. Well, there was no spike in Feb 2020 during the Waldman statements.
Well, the spike in February 2020 was before the Waldman statements, right?
I would have you. Can we pull up the chart again if you want to talk about the spikes?
Sure. Can you put up 1294?
Esatto, Ronny.
Number one. Yeah, that spike happened before the Waldman statements.
Okay. And there was hardly any activity in negative hashtags until February 2020, correct?
That's correct.
And you understand that the spike in February 2020 was related to the partial tape that Mr. Waldman and Mr. Depp leaked to the Daily Mail, right?
I'm aware that the articles were related to Heard admitting to hitting Depp.
And you understand that Mr. Waldman testified that Mr. Depp and Mr. Waldman met with the Daily Mail in person to provide the partial tape to the Daily Mail.
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, he talked about what the number one related to.
What's the objection?
Sorry, lack of foundation and
I'm asking if you know, if he knows or he doesn't.
All right, overruled.
So what's important to me is the fact that this spike is prior to the Waldman statements.
Do you know if Mr. Waldman testified that Mr. Depp and he met with the Daily Mail in person to provide the partial tape?
No.
In February of 2020? You don't know one way or the other?
It's irrelevant to my opinion.
Okay. And the spike in July of 2020 came right after the last defamatory statement by Mr. Depp and Mr. Waldman, correct?
The July spike, which is number 2, is not related to the Waldman statements, and there are articles related to abuse between Heard and Depp and feces found in Depp's bed.
And that's based on Google searches you did?
That's correct.
Okay. And the July spike in time came after the June 27th, 2020 defamatory statement by Mr. Depp and Mr. Waldman, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And 5 of the 6 spikes came after the defamatory statements, correct?
After the Waldman statements, yes.
Okay. Now, you testified before that you eliminated
Forse
shares
questo è
and
l'avvocato
likes
migliore
of
che ha
Waldman
lei.
statements from your analysis, right?
Repeat that, please.
Did you say that you eliminated shares and likes of tweets that included the Depp Waldman statements?
That's correct. When I was doing my analysis, I noticed the exact same text was a part of many of these tweets.
Don't shares and likes disseminate the negative information?
That's quite possible.
Okay. And you agree, right, that use of the term Waldman or Waldmanian occurred over 25% of the time in the negative tweets toward Ms. Heard from April 2020 through January 2021, correct?
Although it's irrelevant to this case, it has nothing to do with the Waldman statements. That's what Mr. Schnell says.
You don't disagree with the search results, correct?
Although has nothing to do with this case or the Waldman statements, I do not disagree.
So if people are tweeting about Adam Waldman or Waldmanian at the same time as tweeting negative hashtags about Amber Heard, it's your testimony that they have nothing to do with this case?
The hashtags have nothing to do with this case.
That's what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if they include the negative hashtags with Mr. Waldman,
Stanno brulicando nel
name
suo
and
banco.
Waldmanian, you're saying they have nothing to do with the defamatory statements?
All 4 hashtags that Snell used had nothing to do with the Waldman statements.
Yeah.
Waldman himself has nothing to do with the Waldman statements. We're talking about the Waldman statements here. Waldmanian, I don't even know what that is, but again, it has nothing to do with this case, and it's not related to the Waldman statements. That's what's important.
And the reason you're saying they're not related to the Waldman statements is because someone didn't literally copy what Adam Waldman said in the Daily Mail and tweet it out?
Well, I looked at enough tweets that included the name Waldman that have nothing to do with anything negative or the Waldman statements.
No, they must have had
Waldman
to have the negative hashtags toward Ms. Heard, because the only way that those would have been in the data you looked at would have had the negative hashtags towards Ms. Heard. It was looking at that universe, correct?
Well, first of all, I don't agree that justice for Johnny Depp is a negative hashtag towards Amber Heard. So listen, the assignment was to determine if the tweets that Mr. Schnell presented were related or included the Waldman statements.
In your review of the tweets related to Ms. Heard, you cannot point to any that were positive toward Ms. Heard, correct?
Again, I was not looking for that.
And you did not review the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp during the time frame from April 1st, 2020 to January 1st, 2020 to see if there were any that were not negative toward Ms. Heard?
I did not look into anything as it relates to anything other than what relates to the Waldman statements. That's what's at issue here today as we sit in court.
And you didn't form any statistical analysis to rule out the Waldman statement's impact on the hashtags, correct?
Correct.
You did not analyze whether media and press coverage other than the Waldman statements affected Ms. Heard's career, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Looking at the exhibit that's in front of you, where you have the numbers here, those you said are related to Google searches?
The 1 through 6?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And can we put up plaintiff's 888
Di sto passo finisce i fogli.
And we could just start at 1. Do you understand that your... Okay. Oh, thanks. And 888, it's page 76. These are the documents you relied upon for your opinion today?
Yes.
And are these the where it has the different letters? These are the searches that you ran for the various time frames and the articles that came up for numbers 1 through 6, correct?
No, I mean,
No.
obviously document 1A is the Heard Supplemental Expert Witness Disclosure. These are documents that I used throughout the time I've been working on this project. So these aren't related to those 1 through 6 numbers.
Okay. These are documents you relied upon for your opinion today?
These are documents that I relied
Perdi
upon
parole,
when
Cestu.
I presented my designation.
For your opinion today, that you're offering today?
Yeah, these are the documents that, yes, I've relied on throughout this case.
Okay. And actually, Michelle, could you turn in this designation to, let's see.
Non lo sapevo, Armstrong, interessante.
Hold on one second. Can you just scroll down? Yeah, keep scrolling. Just keep going.
Scrolla.
Keep going. Okay, stop. This was the chart you provided with your designation for your opinions in this case,
Analista
correct?
di Google, Claire.
Yes.
Okay. And
Pensa se mettessi i sottotitoli in italiano, Cestu.
it's similar to the chart that we had before with the 1 through 6, correct?
That's correct.
And where it has the various boxes, it's talking about documents 6E through 6H, for instance, related to Depp wanting to have Heard replaced on Aquaman. see that?
Yes.
And you prepared this chart, correct?
Yeah, this was part of my designation.
I'd like to have this page as a demonstrative.
Your Honor, I do have an objection, if I might be heard.
All right, if you want to come forward, page 99.
Stampa e salva. Qualcuno ha ancora la lista di quelli che devono testimoniare oggi? Ah, eccola qua. Allora. Dr. Richard Shaw. Non ha parlato. Kimberly Collins. No. Walter Amada ha parlato. Mancano un po' di interviste molto molto interessanti. Nello specifico sono curioso dell'esperto di metadata. Voglio sentire che cosa dice. Dovrebbe arrivare le arringhe venerdì, Ronny. Come mai sono così vivi a quel tavolo oggi? Esatto, Metus. Giovedì forse parlano solo gli avvocati, quindi abbiamo il processo ancora domani e poi direttamente venerdì. Avete visto? Ha tirato un calcio per terra? Ha tirato un calcio per terra? Ha tirato un calcio per terra?
Mr. Banya. Other than
Sei fottuto. Spalle al muro.
So as I understand it, the way you determined that the tweets were not related to the Waldman statements was that you looked at time and then you ran certain Google searches, correct?
Correct.
And then the top 3 hits came up.
Correct.
And then you looked through the article to see if the Waldman statements were there?
So as it relates to any trending event, any defamation that's happened online, any allegations of economic loss because something went viral.
Ci sarà stato uno scarafaggio per terra.
Looking at the spikes in time,
Forse Ember ha la foto dello scarafaggio.
See what was happening on those top 3 sites will give you an indication of the best results that were being served at that time. So something viral that's happening would appear most likely in those top 3 results.
And just so the record's clear, if we could go back to page 76 of this document. Numbers 6A through 6N, going to the next page, those are the headlines of the searches that you found?
Correct.
Differentemente camminato. And you don't disagree that that negative tweets toward Ms. Heard have continued throughout the analysis of the tweets, correct?
I'm not looking at whether they're negative tweets or those hashtags are negative. I'm determining if those tweets are related to the Waldman statements.
Right, okay, and you have no opinion whether the tweets were positive or negative towards Ms. Heard. That's what you're saying?
Yes, I'm just analyzing whether or not they're related to the Waldman statements.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, redirect.
I have no further questions of this witness, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Sir, you can leave the courtroom or you please stay.
Thank you.
All right, your next witness. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief recess for you at this point. Hopefully within 15 minutes we'll get right back to you, okay? Do not discuss the case and don't do any outside research. Sorry, do not discuss the case and don't do any outside research, sorry.
Qual è il
Just take a
prossimo testimone che non ho
short
capito?
break.
Perché short break? Perché short break? È già ora? Ma no! Altra motion to strike?
Right, so just so that we're on the same page, you can have a seat. Keep standing the whole time. All right, just so we're on the same page with Mr. Knight's testimony. Actually, could Mr. Knight go back out?
Mr. Knight?
All right. So we're on the same page with Mr. Knight's testimony. There is a rule on witnesses. However, Mr. Knight's a rebuttal witness. The purpose of excluding witnesses from the courtroom, usually it's a courtroom, is to deprive a later witness of the opportunity to shape testimony to correspond with that of an earlier witness. The issue we have here, obviously, if it was a direct witness in the direct testimony, you have time to do a rule on witnesses, let them know about the rule on witnesses. With a rebuttal witness, it's a little different because they didn't know they were going to be a witness. You didn't know they were going to be a witness. I understand that part. The problem is the courtroom in this particular case appears to be the world. So what we have to do here is I'm going to do a voir dire, and I'll allow both sides to ask questions as well of Mr. Knight to see what he has seen of the case. And I'm just going to use the factors that the case law in Virginia uses, which the factors to consider, because the court does have broad discretion to permit or prohibit a witness to testify in this particular circumstance. The factors I'm going to consider is if the impropriety was intentional, which we'll find out, the prejudice attached to it, also if the excluded witness learned about substantive aspects of the case from an earlier testifying witness, and whether that knowledge had any effect on his or her testimony.
Allora, in poche parole, il prossimo testimone è un testimone diretto dell'incidente di Hicksville. Solitamente questo testimone dovrebbe essere completamente all'ignaro di ciò che è successo all'interno dell'aula di tribunale, ma in questo caso l'aula di tribunale è il mondo intero, perché tutti quanti lo stanno guardando. Di conseguenza adesso procederanno con un interrogatorio da parte di entrambe le parti per verificare l'imparzialità di questo testimone. Questo è uno qualunque, quindi, in poche parole. È un chiunque, questo qua? Dipende per chi parla. Bisogna capire da che parte, cioè, per chi sta parlando.
Sir, what we're doing is I'm just going to ask you a few questions outside the presence of the jury, and then the attorneys are going to ask you a few questions, okay? Sure. Then I'm going to have you step back outside after that, okay?
No problem.
All right, what's your full name, sir?
Poverino.
Morgan Higby Knight.
Okay, you don't have to be that close. All right. All right, how do you spell your last name?
N-I-G-H-T.
Okay. All right, and sir, before I can allow you to testify, I just want to ask you a few questions. Have you seen any of the trial that's been going on for the past 6 weeks?
Approximately 5 weeks ago, a friend of mine texted me that Hicksville was mentioned, and I watched a little clip where it was mentioned.
Which clip did you watch?
I believe it was somebody testifying about, I think it was a security guard testifying maybe about Hicksville, or I forget exactly who was testifying. But it was something where Hicksville was mentioned, and it was about something about a wrist or something like that.
All right, and what did you do after that? At some point, did you get in contact with attorneys?
So I didn't reach out to them. I didn't really care. The innkeepers that worked at Hicksville before reached out to them and said, we saw some stuff that wasn't true, and then they asked, is it okay if I give the attorneys your phone number? So the attorneys reached out to me.
Okay, and when did the attorneys reach out to you?
May 3rd.
May 3rd. And you talked to the attorneys at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not Camille, but Geraldine.
Okay, and then have you seen any other parts of the trial?
No, she instructed me not to watch anything about it, regardless of if it was about Hicksville or not. So I've been keeping off the internet and turning off anything that seems to be like it's on social media, so I just don't watch it.
Non ancora, Mirko, ma manca poco.
All right. And questions, Mr. Prater?
Quindi Hicksville, ragazzi, è quello delle roulotte?
Mr. Knight, you were contacted by an attorney for Mr. Depp on May 3rd?
Yes.
Okay. And you said it was Carolyn?
Geraldine.
Oh, Yerlin, I got it. Okay. And what?
I think it's pronounced Geraldine.
Okay, can you tell us the conversation you had with her at that time?
Poverino,
Yeah,
questo è uno,
she asked
poverino.
me my recollection of the evening, and I told her, and she said, okay, would you mind testifying? And I said, sure. And she said, okay, well then, we're not sure if we're going to call you or not, but just in case, please don't watch anything having to do with the case. And I said, I will do.
Now, how is it that, to your best knowledge, how is it that Geraldine was able to get hold of you? How did she know that you knew something?
So, like I said, two of my innkeepers, my innkeeper and my manager, had reached out to her team, I think through email, and one of them texted me and said, hey, do you mind if we give Geraldine your phone number?
Now, you also communicated on Twitter, did you not, about this case?
Yeah, 2 weeks prior to Geraldine reaching out to me, someone had made a comment about something that happened by the fire pit, and I said, that's not my recollection. I didn't see, that's not what I saw.
So who was it that made a comment about something that happened at the fire pit?
So once I was told about the fact that Hicksville was mentioned, I went and did a Twitter search of Hicksville trailer. So it was, I don't know who it was, but I was just like, what are they saying about Hicksville? And so that was why I did a search, just to see, because it was weird and fascinating, because the night to me wasn't that remarkable in the context of all the different experiences I've had at the trailer palace.
So
Ma è dimagrito
explain
durante
to
la
me,
pausa
please,
pranzo.
what you mean by you did a trailer search.
So if you go to Twitter and you put in keywords and do a search, all the tweets regarding that subject come up, or anything with those keywords in it. So that is how I found the tweet that I replied to.
Okay. And how many tweets did you find that mentioned Hicksville? when you did that
Ritornare,
search?
perfetto.
Probably like 5
È
or
un
6.
viaggio,
I only
Marcus.
replied to one of them.
Okay. And what do you recall those tweets saying about Hicksville?
The one that I replied to said that there was some incident by the fire pit, and Johnny was yelling at Amber, and I replied that I didn't see that. I was there all night, and I was working that night, so I didn't see anything like that.
So your best recollection on that one was that somebody said somebody was testifying that Johnny was yelling at Amber?
Yeah, and I believe grabbed her or something along those lines.
Do you recall who said Johnny was yelling at Amber and grabbed her?
I have no idea. It was a stranger, so I didn't really pay attention to who was writing it.
All right, and you said that you responded to it. How did you respond to it?
I said that's not what happened. I was there all night. Yeah, basically. I'm paraphrasing. It was a
Did
few
you
months ago.
say anything about what you thought happened?
I just said that didn't happen. I didn't say what. I believe I said maybe something along the lines of, from what I saw, Amber was the one acting jealous, not Johnny.
And you said this to one of the tweets.
Yes.
Do you recall whether that was the Umbrella Man?
I don't recall. That's a ridiculous name, though.
Okay, so tell me about the other 5 tweets that you recall seeing when you ran your trailer search.
I think they were similar in nature, but I don't specifically
Anche se lo
remember the
buttano
details
fuori
of them.
dall'aula, il solo fatto che
That
quest'uomo
was pretty
esista.
much the only one I remembered, and
Too
that's the
little
only
to-
one I
Guarda la
replied
faccia
to.
di lei! Guarda la faccia di
Do
lei!
you remember anything about the other 5 and what was said?
Zumma, zumma!
When you said
Zoom.
somebody told you about a security guard, what was your understanding of what the security guard said?
Questo, King,
I
è uno
just- I
qualunque
got a text
che era
that, somebody in
presente
the trial
durante il viaggio
had
nel
said,
parco delle roulotte, dove Amber e sua sorella hanno raccontato che c'è stato un litigio pesante. Lui è un testimone oculare che ha visto che non è successo per niente quello che hanno detto loro, e ora lo stanno interrogando per
And
vedere
did you
se
have
effettivamente è
any communication with
imparziale.
the innkeepers about what you knew or what you thought?
No, I hadn't talked to them in years and
So-
still haven't regarding the case.
Questo è
How is it that the
la pua Magnum AP bandito dal flea tenuto da parte nella weapon case, quella buona.
Because they still have me in their phone, and Christy, who was the manager at the time, is the one that texted me and said,
È fottuta.
hey, do you mind if we pass this along? Mr. Depp's attorneys want to talk to you.
Guarda lei, guarda lei, guarda lei.
But how is it that, what is the communication you
You're
had
fucked.
with the innkeepers that even led them to
È
understand
cambiata
that you
l'espressione, è
believed you
cambiato
had
tutto.
knowledge about
È cambiato tutto, è panico
Hicksville, the
totale
Hicksville
questo.
incident?
There was no conversation. They knew because they were both working that same night. Jenna was the innkeeper, and she was there along with me that night. She
FZ.
was the one who texted me, and she had come in the
Johnny ha
following morning
portato
for her
questo
shift.
testimone.
And I slept over. I was living in
Matis
that
no.
night.
So, I'm
Sta
trying to
sentendo la
understand,
pressione
so
all'osso
just
pubico.
based on the fact that 7 years ago, they happened to know that you were working that night.
9 years ago, and it's because I was there
Okay.
with them.
My math, well, it's 2022 right now, and that was, what year? Oh, that was
2013.
You're right, okay. So how is it that out of the blue, they remembered 9 years ago that you worked there that night and that you might have some knowledge?
I mean, to be honest, like, we do get celebrities sometimes, but
Io vivo per sta roba, ragazzi.
was, it's not that unmemorable. It's not like it's any other night of the week. So I'm sure they remembered the specifics of that night.
Had Mr. Depp's attorneys ever attempted to contact you before?
No,
Had you ever attempted to contact Mr. Depp's attorneys before?
no, I had no interest.
All right, have you had any conversations with Mr. Depp's attorneys other than the one you described with Geraldine?
Since,
Yes.
well, I met with Camille last night.
All right, and what was that conversation? Please describe.
I just went through, the story again that I had told Geraldine.
And let's hear what that story was.
You want
Vai.
me to go through
Yes,
the whole story?
Your Honor, we would object to attorney work product.
there's no attorney work product.
No, I'll overrule that.
All right.
That's fine. That's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Lei gli ha detto no in maniera carinissima, vi prego.
Work product.
Your Honor, we would object to attorney work product.
There's no attorney work product.
Che carina, mamma mia, è troppo carina. Gli ha detto no nella maniera più carina del mondo, certo che lo conosco.
I had when I was on duty with Mr. Depp and
Gli ha
Mr.
detto di no
Mr.
nella maniera più dolce del mondo.
How the evening progressed throughout the night, the levels of drinking and drug use that I witnessed, what the state of the damaged trailer the next morning.
Com'è la situazione? Stiamo per assistere alla
And
Moab.
basically just, the details that I had only, spent total 45 minutes to an hour with Mr. Depp. I misheard throughout the entire course of the night, so it was my recollection of those events during that time.
And
Voglio
what
inquadrata
did
lei.
Ms. Vasquez say to you?
Your Honor, this is beyond, we object on the grounds that it's beyond the scope of the voir dire,
No,
which is
I
limited
think
to the
whatever
three
she said to
criteria.
him
But
is
may I
very
please finish
clear.
stating my objection, Your Honor?
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
The objection is that it's beyond the scope of the voir dire. Your Honor enumerated the three criteria which are relevant here. And this is a rebuttal witness, so
Your Honor, whatever Ms. Vasquez shared with him is going to be very important here because they knew by this time he was going to be a witness. So.
Well, that was
what-
last night, so how
Right.
does that fit into one of the three factors of deciding whether or not he's going to testify?
Well, one of the three factors, Your Honor, may I approach so that the witness doesn't hear?
Okay, that's fine.
Vai Camille! La zanna! Ah! Quella donna ha un grande futuro con me! Wow! Se passa questo testimone, ragazzi, se passa questo testimone, questa è la bomba che mancava. Questa è la bomba H che mancava.
Mr. Knight, did
Yes.
Ms. Vasquez provide you with any information that anyone had testified to or said at any point?
No, she didn't talk about anything.
Non è
except for
scema,
asking
non è
me
scema,
my
Camille.
experience and just getting a clear understanding of what my experience was. She didn't mention anything outside of the scope of what I saw, and just asked me for the facts and told me just tell the truth and let me know, you know.
Do you know what any of the witnesses said in this trial?
About, I mean, outside of what I described earlier with the, a friend of mine texting that someone was talking about Trailer Palace, I do not.
Do you know whether any of the witnesses testified about any jealousy?
Other than the tweet that I replied to, no.
All right.
You're fucked.
Your Honor, may we approach?
All right, well, do you have any questions? All right, sir, if you could have a seat back outside the courtroom.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can I leave my water?
Yes, you can leave your water.
Poverino, ma questo è un fiorellino di campo, ma chi è lui? Minchia ragazzi, questa è la P20 caricata di nascosto in 7,5, la P20. Giudice che risponde con sfacciataggine.
Abbiamo un giudice ormai pesantemente provato da quello che è stata la situazione snervante di questi giorni ininterrotti di processo. Nell'angolo sinistro del ring possiamo vedere Ambra sentita con faccia ormai rassegnata, pronta a prendere un calibro incredibile in orifizi dove non batte il sole ma dove evidentemente passano le lenzuola. Dall'altra parte, all'angolo destro del ring, possiamo vedere Giovanni Profondo, tranquillissimo a continuare il suo disegno. Alla fine di questo processo pubblicherà il suo libro di opere d'arte, disegni in sala di discussione tribunale. Nel frattempo la signora si prende la sua meritatissima pausa alle dita, questa povera martire della società moderna, la martire del 2022 che si è trascritta 32 giorni di processo, 8 ore al giorno senza sosta. Ha trascritto le supercazzole dei testimoni di ieri. Vediamo un po' se ci ricordiamo i nomi di questi campioni. Ha dovuto trascrivere appunto le testimonianze di Davide Spigola, medico psichiatra contestato per le qualifiche di esperto, imbecille che parlava in generale senza analizzare nel dettaglio nulla, ed è stato ormai reso il fantoccio di questo processo incredibile. Si chiamava Davide Spigola. Davide Spigola. Vediamo una discussione animatissima, il nostro nato marcio che guarda con rassegnazione il giudice dritto negli occhi mentre Camilla Vasca e Benjamin Masticato vanno per la sciabolata finale per portare a casa il punteggio con l'incredibile bomba fotonica che hanno portato oggi con il testimone oculare di quello che è stato il festival delle roulotte. Avranno visto forse la perquisizione vaginale accanto al falò, avranno visto forse il potente litigio di Giovanni Profondo, o forse avrà scoperto le menzogne di Ambra Sentita. Si tratta infatti di un momento di elevatissima televisione e ci chiediamo quale potrebbe essere il futuro di questi due fantastici attori.
Perfetto. Non so più cosa inventarmi, sono andato avanti 4 minuti, ma abbiamo visto un sorriso. Masticato. Commentatore di processo. Ma è forte il volume quando faccio sta cagata? Ditemelo che lo regolo. Troppo forte il volume? Un po', ok.
Si effettua dunque una correzione appreciazione di quello che è il volume di questa parte di commento che il pubblico apprezza grandemente. Con la loro opinione si è provveduto a correggere l'impulso volumetrico audiofilo di questo passaggio. E forse meglio adesso? Meno? E si abbassa ulteriormente di un 7 decibel. Nel frattempo possiamo vedere uno sguardo estremamente rilassato di Beniamino Masticato e Camilla Vasca che si girano verso il tavolo di Giovanni Profondo con un sorriso vittorioso. Mentre vediamo Nato Marce, qualcuno mi può ricordare gentilmente il nome dell'avvocatessa leader del team di Ambra Sentita, per favore? Forza Ana, sono sicuro che conosci. E tornano seduti, vediamo se il testimone verrà ammesso. Attenzione, un freeze dell'immagine, forse per aumentare la tensione e la suspense all'interno del pubblico, in piedi sulle sedie. Non si sa cosa succede, è necessario un refresh. F5. Incredibile, queste sono le grandi cospirazioni, questo è chiaramente un complotto con la G davanti, perché è incredibile, dopo, non sappiamo il risultato, la tensione si taglia con un coltello, è necessario aprire un'ulteriore diretta per verificare le informazioni. Apriamo una diretta alternativa. Torna il testimone. Preparatevi alla calibro 50.
Sabotatore bolscevico. Questo è l'ultimo chiodo della bara. È il momento dell'inno.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for the interruption. You're going to notice as we get closer to the end of the testimony, you're probably going to have some more interruptions, and I apologize for that, but there's just some matters we have to take up outside your presence, okay? All right, thank you. Some matters we have to take up outside your presence, okay? All right, thank you. All right, your next witness. All right, Mr. Knight, if you could come forward to be sworn.
Ma va Camilla. Camilla, calpestaci. Calpestaci tutti, Camilla.
Sir, if you have a seat.
No,
Camille.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Morgan Higby Knight.
Mr. Knight, where are you from?
I live in Los Angeles, California.
And what do you do for a living?
So I currently own and run Hicksville Pines Bud and Breakfast in Idlewild, California. And I created and ran Hicksville Trailer Palace in Joshua Tree, California.
È fottuta. È fottuta, Amber. Questo è il proprietario di Hicksville. È fottuta.
How is Hicksville Pines Bud and Breakfast different from Hicksville Trailer Palace?
So Hicksville Pines Bud and Breakfast is up in the mountains of Idlewild, which is a beautiful snow town above Palm Springs. And all the units are A-frames instead of trailers, which we have. It's obviously a very different climate than Joshua Tree, which is a desert area. The rooms, which are themed at both places, are trailers, vintage trailers from the 50s through the 70s at Hicksville Trailer Palace. So there's also different kind of amenities. There's a pool in Joshua Tree. There's a rec room up at Hicksville Pines.
When did you first become the owner of the Trailer Palace?
Trailer Palace, I started building it in 2009. It took about a year with my collaborator, Stephen Butcher, and on the trailers. And we got done and opened in 2010.
Did there come a time that you sold the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
Yeah, I did at the beginning of 2020. I had some health issues and it was too much to run both at the same time. So I chose Idlewild because it was newer and shinier.
And just for my sake, how long did you own the Trailer Palace?
So 10 years of us being open, 11 years total.
And what was the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
So it started out as a artist retreat. I was a filmmaker at the time and wanted a place to get away and work on film projects outside of Los Angeles. I also put in a recording studio so musicians could record records there. I had lived in New Orleans for 5 years, and there was an amazing recording studio there called Kingsway, where all the musicians would come and they'd live in this big mansion and record their records. And I just thought that was a really neat thing for artists to be able to get away and create create whatever they were working on. Over the course of the build out of all the trailers, themed trailers, which I'm a huge fan of this hotel called Madonna Inn. And so I wanted to do really detailed themed trailers. It became too expensive to just make a living off of an artist retreat. So I decided before I was done to make it a hotel as well.
And what were your job responsibilities, generally speaking, when you owned the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
So I would be live-in manager some nights, a couple nights a week. I would also drive out from Los Angeles twice a week and bring supplies that you can't get out in the Yucca Valley area and Joshua Tree. There's just a lot of things like, Smart and Finals, Costco's and stuff. So I would drive that
Questa
stuff
è la
out.
bomba finale.
There's also no USPS, so sometimes I'd have to get things shipped to my house and drive them out as well. I would also just do
No, squad, mi
constantly
scuso.
building and creating
Inox
new
salta questa
stuff for
settimana.
Trailer Palace, whether it's new trailers or amenities. So I would be working on that stuff as well. I'm a big fan of the
Non
fact
posso
that
adesso,
Disneyland is
aspetta, Andrea.
always making it better and better.
And when you were the live-in manager, does that mean that you spent the night at the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
Yeah, we have a house on site where the recording studio was, and there's a bedroom in there. So whoever is live-in manager those nights stays in the house and basically lives there. There's a kitchen.
Quanto è stata colta di sorpresa Amber con questa roba?
Have you ever
Quanto?
met the plaintiff in this case, Mr. Depp?
I had met him really briefly at the Viper Room in the late 90s. I had worked with some of the people that performed there and was good friends with this girl Robin from the Pussycat Dolls and some other friends in this band, The Imposters. So I was there and I met him once.
How about Miss Heard? Ever met her?
I had never met her before. They were guests at the hotel.
When was the first time that you met Mr. Depp and Miss Heard together?
In late May 2013, when they were guests, Mr. Depp's assistant Nathan had rented out the entire place so they could have a night.
Non lo
there
sapevano,
in
Darkness.
privacy.
What do you recall, if anything, about Mr. Depp and Miss Heard's arrival to the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
Mr. Depp got lost, so his security guard who arrived early asked me if I could go fetch them because he had an old car that didn't really fare on the dirt roads out there, which are pretty horrible. So I went out and made sure that they got themselves and the car back to Hicksville safely.
Do you remember approximately at what time that was?
It was 3 to 4 in the afternoon.
Lei
What was
adesso
Mr.
sputerà
Depp's demeanor when they first
post-it.
arrived?
At Trailer Palace, he was super excited about the place, really complimentary, just had a lot of questions and just seemed like he was in a really great mood.
And how about Miss Heard's demeanor? Anything stick out?
She was pretty quiet. She just kind of didn't say that much when I was giving them the tour of the grounds and the trailer.
And was anyone else with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard when they first arrived?
There's people that are arriving throughout the afternoon. So there was, I think 10 to 12 people total ended up staying. The security guard had gotten there earlier and just to check out the place. But yeah.
And did I understand your testimony previously that the entire trailer park was rented out by Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
Yeah, the whole place slept, I believe, at the time, about 25 people, but there was only 10 to 12 in this party.
And who was part of that party besides Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
I'm really horrible with names, but I remember one of them was Ms. Heard's sister and the security guard I mentioned before, but I honestly forgot his name too.
What happened when Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard first came onto the property?
So I gave them a tour of, we give all guests a tour of their specific trailer and the grounds, and show them around. When someone rents the whole place, they get another trailer called the bar trailer, which is basically a place to set up their alcohol and stuff, and some people in the group were just putting their beverages in that area.
And where were you when Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard...
Post-it su post-it, questo che guarda su Twitter sta cercando di vedere di smentirlo. Sta cercando post su Twitter di lui che sapeva.
Area, so they were generally around that area the entire evening that I saw them.
And what did you observe of Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard as the evening progressed?
So Mr. Depp was just super curious and really nice. He was also really interested in my innkeeper because she was a musician, so they would talk about music a lot. At one point, the innkeeper who lived at the next door property went home and grabbed her guitar.
Camilla aveva questa bomba nella bussolottiera dall'inizio.
In the early evening, there was another instance.
Camille al conceal carry di una 500 Smith & Wesson.
Her name was Jenna, and myself were talking about books and music, and Miss Heard came over and kind of interjected. She seemed a little annoyed that Mr. Depp wasn't spending time with her.
What about Ms. Heard's demeanor made you think that she was annoyed?
I think just generally she, it's hard, like I think, I don't know, it was just like a gut reaction, like I can't describe it, but, you know.
How long were you with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard that evening? Generally.
So throughout the course
non
of the
abbastanza,
evening, I was
Costadin.
probably 40, mostly with Mr. Depp, but 45 minutes to an hour total. So it was, yeah, that's over the whole course until the end of the night after the check-in.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to observe Mr. Depp interact with other people, guests on the property that evening?
Yes, I saw him hanging out with his security guard at one point, and outside of the time that him and Jenna were singing around the campfire, he was off by himself a lot of the time.
Era da solo tanto tempo.
Was over at the
Era da solo.
Campfire with her friends and seemed to have a good time.
And if you haven't already, can you generally describe for the jury your observations of Ms. Heard that evening?
Yeah, she seemed to be having a really nice time with her friends around the campfire. And yeah, everyone was in a pretty good mood.
Did there come a time in the evening that you observed Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard have a disagreement or an argument?
Yes. I was speaking with Mr. Depp, just one-on-one, talking about Hicksville, and
quindi parlava con Johnny Depp da solo del posto.
And she said that I want to talk to you, and seemed really upset about something. So I went and back in the house because it was really they went off on their own, and she started yelling at him, and I didn't want to hear it. It honestly was really triggering because I've been in an emotionally abusive relationship before.
Objections. Move to strike.
What's the objection?
You're up, may we approach?
Okay, sure.
Adesso, per la prima volta in 30 giorni, la vedo come l'ho vista nello UK. Adesso vedo il suo modo di fare, il suo modo di rivolgersi agli avvocati uguale allo UK.
Mr. Knight, will you please just explain for us what you observed when you saw Mr. Depp
Questa
and
è
Ms.
lei.
Heard having an argument?
Yes. So
Gesto della mano, gli occhi che
Mr.
guardano da
Gaston,
sotto, la fascia non più così,
off to the side, and
non
she
più,
was
ma
upset at him, and
asciutta,
she was yelling at
attenta.
him,
È come un
and
gatto con la schiena alzata. Dopo vi faccio vedere un'intervista.
personally had been in,
Objection.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
okay.
If you could just explain to the jury what you observed when you saw Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard having an argument.
Okay. He was kind of cowering and seemed almost afraid, and it was really like odd to see because he was older than her, obviously. So, but I just went back in the house because I didn't want to.
Objection.
Ciao.
To what he did.
All right, I'll sustain as to.
Understood. So after you observed the argument, fair to say
Ciao.
you went back to your house on site?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay. What happened after that?
So when I saw Mr. Depp on my next rounds, he apologized profusely and said, "I'm really sorry about that." She was upset.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Sustain. Next question.
What, if any, type of reaction did Mr. Depp have?
He was just
Ormai è
Objection,
accettato,
Your Honor,
Darkness.
hearsay. He's going to say it again.
It's the reaction, it's not the statement.
All right, if you could make that clear, that's
Yeah,
fine.
just what type of physical reaction did Mr. Depp have after the argument between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
He honestly, throughout the rest of the night, became a lot more quiet and was just very more petulant. In the beginning of the night, he was a lot more outgoing and extroverted, and throughout, as the course of the night went on, he was less and less so and more quiet.
Il piporitto in questo
Did you
momento di
observe
Johnny.
any of the guests consuming alcohol while on the property?
I assume they were. I mean, people had cups and there was alcohol set up in the bar.
Perché va fuori
trailer,
contesto,
but I
Kuro.
didn't physically see them pour alcohol into their cup and cup go into the mouth per se.
Did you witness Mr. Depp drink any alcohol that evening?
I couldn't say.
Anything about Mr. Depp's demeanor that made you think he was perhaps intoxicated?
Yes, as the night went on, I am a former bar owner, so even though I wasn't drinking that night, I'm very familiar with the signs. So just as the night went on, like I said, he became more and more quiet, but he also, as we would have conversations, his head would kind of sway a little bit back and forth, which was a little, he was much less sharp than he was earlier in the night.
Ok.
Did Ms. Heard appear intoxicated to you?
She did. She seemed, I think when she was angry at him, it seemed like she was intoxicated, but that's just based on my experience and my own personal trauma dealing with abuse.
Objection, Your Honor, move to strike.
All right, I'll sustain the objection and strike it from the record. Please disregard that testimony.
Did you observe anyone do or take drugs?
I did not.
No, ok.
Did you witness Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard interact other than the argument that you previously described for the jury?
At the end of the night, I heard a commotion. I was inside the house and came out. I couldn't tell what was going on. And Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard were having a discussion about about, I'm not sure what, but then they went to their trailer. At that point, a lot of people had already gone to bed. So it just kind of petered out. Everyone went to bed, including myself, and I didn't hear anything else the rest of the night.
What time did the evening come to an end?
I'd say it was almost around 3 a.m.
Ok.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp grab anyone?
Objection, leading.
Sustained?
Did you ever see Mr. Depp become physical with anyone?
Objection, leading.
Sustained. Next question.
Did you ever witness Mr. Depp get angry that evening?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Riformula, ce l'hai
What,
Camilla,
if
ce l'hai.
anything, happened the next morning?
The next morning, we have checkout at noon at the time, before COVID. And so around 11 o'clock, one of my innkeepers let me know that there was some damage.
Objection, hearsay.
Come siamo attivi questa sera?
Did something happen that caused you to go to Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's trailer?
Yes, I was informed that.
Objection, hearsay.
It's not being offered for the truth, Your Honor. I mean, may we approach on this
Okay,
one topic?
sure.
Thank you.
Ce l'hai nel culo. Amber, quando questo ha iniziato a parlare, sapeva già dove sarebbe andato a parare. Nel post-it scommetto che
What, if
c'era
anything, happened the next morning?
l'obiezione per questa roba qua.
The
Amber ha
innkeepers
anticipato
let me know
all'avvocato
that there
quello
was
che è
some damage in
successo.
one of the trailers, and it happened to be Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's trailer. So I wanted to inspect the trailer because I was extremely worried. All those trailers that Steve and I worked on were like my babies, and the one they were staying in was the only one that was mostly original and restored 1950s style, and so I was
Sta forse per testimoniare che era tutto a
very
posto?
concerned.
So what did you observe when you went to the trailer?
I observed that there was a light sconce by the bathroom in the bedroom that had been broken off the wall, and a couple pieces were on the floor, and they were, and yeah, it was basically just
Squad
broken. The light
longa.
fixture was hanging on the wall still, and except for the pieces that were on the floor.
Did you come to understand how that happened?
Objection, foundation, and
All right,
light.
foundation. I'll sustain as to foundation, how he knew.
Did you ask how the sconce was broken?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Dai Camille.
How often do light fixtures in the trailers break?
They break pretty
Certo Gioele.
often. I mean, it's not like a usual thing, but things in the trailers generally get broken because it's all vintage trailers, and I would say as much as every couple weeks
Live,
there's some
this guy.
incident of damage in one of the trailers. In this case, Mr. Depp had told me that.
Objection,
Sustain the
hearsay.
objection.
So anyway, yes.
Beyond the light fixture, was anything else in the trailer damaged?
No, everything else looked fine. In fact, we have something we call a piggy fee that we address to guests, that if there's anything what we call inconsiderate or unusually large messes, we charge them extra for it, for a $25 an hour cleaning fee.
Questa è lei
But they did
davvero.
not receive one of
Questa è la
those.
vera lei,
Everything
ragazzi.
outside of light fixture looks fine.
Mi trovi una clip
What was your
dell'Inghilterra?
reaction to
Questa è
seeing the
esattamente
damaged light
lei.
fixture?
Finalmente
To be honest, I was
scende la
relieved
maschera.
Because it was not a big deal. I just tucked, there was already another light in the room, so I just
Sorride
tucked the
di
wires in the wall,
spocchiosità,
so I
non è
had
un sorriso
bigger
felice.
time
Guarda l'atteggiamento, guardate come
to,
parla.
buy- it was matching sconce with another one in the room.
È altezzosa, è
So
convinta
I
di
had
aver
to
ragione,
on
sta
eBay
smentendo
find a
e
matching
prendendo
pair
in
that
giro
would fit
questo
there,
signore.
And when I finally got around to it,
Spocchiosa
I
è il
was
modo
able to get
giusto.
that and charge it to Nathan, whose credit card I had.
And what
Questa
was your
è la vera
understanding
lei.
who Nathan was?
Mr. Depp's assistant.
Okay. And what did
Grazie,
you
Anna.
charge Nathan or Mr. Depp for replacing that pair of light fixtures?
The pair came out to $62.
while you were on site, Mr. Knight, did you ever wear a
Quella è la
mesh
faccia che fa
shirt?
quando pensa di essere più furba degli altri.
No, I would absolutely never wear that.
At any time during Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's stay on the property, did you see Mr. Depp become physical with anyone?
Objection leading.
Overruled, that's
Overruled, vai
I'm
avanti.
sorry, that answer was
I never saw Mr. Depp get physical with anyone when I saw him.
Sapevo che Camille ci tornava sopra e ce la faceva.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Knight, you are a pretty big fan of Johnny Depp, aren't you?
I am not. To be honest,
Cosa hanno trovato?
throughout the evening,
Sorry, I just asked you one question.
Oh, I
didn't ask
apologize.
you the rest of that.
I
You wanted
apologize.
to participate in this trial, didn't you?
I did not. I
You
was
knew-
asked by the attorney, and I
Questo è il post.
wanted to. They asked me, and I said I'll be happy to come and tell the truth.
You knew this was on camera, that it was being broadcast to a lot of people.
Certo.
And you saw testimony, did you not, in this case? And you seized the moment and responded to the umbrella guy, the lead person for Mr. Depp's Twitters.
Lo sapevo.
Did you not?
objection, Your Honor, argumentative compound.
overruled.
Lo sapevo.
Mr. Umbrella Guy is the lead. The lead
You
what?
know that he leads one of the most predominant pro-Depp Twitters out there.
I have no idea. I don't care or follow the Umbrella Guy.
In fact, you do follow a Twitter called Johnny Depp Fan, don't you?
Absolutely not.
You don't? That's your testimony under oath?
It is my testimony under oath.
All right. And on April 21st, Mr. Depp testified in this case about Hicksville, didn't he?
I wasn't here.
And in fact, you tweeted in response to the umbrella guy,
I got it.
April 21, 22, quote, "That never happened. I was with them all night. Amber was the one acting all jealous and crazy." Do you
Yes, I-
recall writing that?
Me lo puoi
I
rileggere
do
per
recall
favore?
writing that.
Michelle, can
Well,
you bring that up, please? We're going to call it Defendants 1903.
1903.
Certo che ho ragione, ragazzi, la pipa del sapere, la pipa della conoscenza.
Even the umbrella
Certo che lo sapevo, Brandy.
and the date. And the bringing in the Hicksville. Your Honor, I'm sorry.
La pipa, scritto così. Bravo, il nome di questo sarà Pipa, Klaus. Lo sapevo. Cosa c'è nella pipa? Sapere. La pipa ritta. Pepa ritta. Lo sapevo.
While she's working on that, did you write and direct a piece called Matters of Consequence
No, Anna.
back in 1999?
I did.
And didn't Mr. Depp's first wife, Lorianne Allison, work as a makeup artist on that?
She absolutely did.
And while we're looking at that, 4 days after you tweeted to Umbrella Man, you,
I was Umbrella Guy.
Umbrella Guy, okay. Well, all right, now we have this up. I'm going to ask you to take a look what is Defendant's Exhibit 1903. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and that's from that Umbrella Guy on 4/21/22, correct?
Correct.
And it says bringing in the Hicksville incident accusations. Do you see that?
I do.
And there's clearly Mr. Depp testifying there, likely a video, right?
Okay.
And you respond, "That never happened. I was with them all night. Amber was the one acting all jealous and crazy." Do you see that?
I do.
Your Honor,
I do.
move the admission of Defendants 1903.
I
Any
do.
objection?
Yeah, Your Honor, we believe the first part of the that umbrella guy's tweet should be unredacted for context.
Oh, well,
Facci vedere cosa ha scritto.
I have no idea what I was replying to.
It's hearsay, it's rank
Facci
hearsay.
vedere cosa hai scritto. Hanno cancellato il commento di Umbrella Guy. Hanno cancellato. Vai Camilla. Esci sto commento, cazzo. Che stronzi. Hanno estrapolato il suo commento e Camille vuole vedere l'intera comunicazione. Facci vedere quella comunicazione, cazzo. Spezzali sti falsi di merda. La sorella non abbandona mamma mia, ragazzi se passa
All right. Can make that redaction.
sì,
With that redaction, any objection?
ce lo vediamo,
Okay, 1903 will
ce lo
be
vediamo.
evidence with, as redacted.
Fammelo leggere tutto, dai.
Now, so you reached out to the umbrella guy in this text, this Twitter, right?
I wouldn't call it reaching out.
In fact, the
No,
umbrella guy is in
No!
Mr. Adam Waldman. Do you know who Adam Waldman is?
I have no idea.
Well, he's testified earlier that he talks to the umbrella guy.
Did he what? He talks to the umbrella guy?
Yeah, were you aware of that?
I honestly, this sounds like schizophrenia.
Okay. Now, 4 days after this event where you texted, Your Honor, yeah, it's in, okay, good. 4 days after that, you tweeted something pretty nasty about Elon Musk, didn't you?
I did.
Okay, thank you. So you don't like Elon Musk, right?
Objection
Well-
relevance.
Oh,
I don't know Elon Musk.
Overruled.
thank you.
So that was the context of that.
Dopo lo
is that
guardiamo.
he had-
I didn't ask you for the context.
I apologize.
Okay.
Sai che ho notato anche ieri che
You texted
parlavano.
Something that had swear words in it. Would you agree about Elon Musk?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your recollections here. 45 minutes to an hour. Your recollection is that Mr. Depp actually drove there?
Yes.
What type of car was he driving?
An old one that was a convertible.
An old convertible?
I'm not a car guy, so I couldn't express the model.
All right, and your recollection was this was May of 2013?
Yes.
Okay, do you recall when in May?
Late May.
Okay. Now, you said that you spent a total of 45 minutes to an hour with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard. Is that correct?
After mostly Mr. Depp, but that's after the tour and after they were checked in throughout the course of the night.
Okay. And you don't recall any of the people that were there other than Ms. Heard's sister and the security guard, correct?
I don't recall any of their names.
Do you
No,
remember
si ricorda i
how many
nomi.
of them were female?
I believe it was predominantly female.
Do you remember how many males were there?
I don't, outside of the security guard.
Do you remember what any of the other people looked like?
They honestly just seemed like youngish hipsters, like for lack of a better term. I know that previously a couple of them had stayed at Hicksville Trailer Palace. That's how they knew about the place.
Okay. So you don't recall seeing how much anybody had to drink that night, correct?
I did not witness that.
And do you recall the use of drugs at all?
I did not witness that.
Okay.
L'ha detto
Were you
prima.
sitting at any point with these people at the campfire?
I was not.
Okay. And when you said that you saw Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp, and Ms. Heard was yelling at Mr. Depp, where were they?
She pulled him for a chat, and it was off towards their trailer, like a little bit off towards the dirt.
How many feet were there between the campfire and their trailer?
The campfire and their trailer?
Yes.
Adesso gli dici.
Approximately 75?
Okay, so where in that 75 feet did Ms. Heard pull Mr. Depp and yell at him and he cowered?
20
Okay, 20
from the campfire.
From
not
the
trailer.
campfire. So
Tutto.
your testimony is that Ms. Heard grabbed Mr. Heard, pulled him 20 feet over, yelled at him, and he cowered.
Yes, that's what I witnessed.
And then did they go back?
I went inside the house.
E non
So
l'ha
you don't know
visto.
whether they returned to the campfire or they returned to their trailer?
I do not.
Okay. And do you know whether there were any disagreements or physical communications, anything of that nature at the campfire?
I do not.
Do you know whether Mr. Depp did anything to anybody else at the campfire?
I didn't see anything.
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Depp grabbed anybody's wrist and asked them if they knew how many pounds of pressure it took to break their wrist?
I wasn't there the whole time.
Okay. Is it your testimony that Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard went last to their trailer? Everybody else went before them?
The rest of the people, I think about half of them had already gone to bed, and they went.
ricorda.
It was all around the same time at the end of the night. That the rest kind of scattered. There might have been a couple of people that went right after them or right before, but it was all around the same time.
Okay, so your recollection is that when Amber and Johnny Depp went back to their trailer, that dissipated, everybody then left at that point?
Yes.
Okay, now, how far away was your house that you were staying in from the trailer that Amber and Johnny Depp were
TikTok,
staying?
bitch.
I'd say it was about 75 feet away.
Okay. And the next time that you saw or heard anything was when you went there in the morning and saw the broken sconce. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I didn't hear anything after went to bed.
Okay. And that's the extent of your knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Vai Camilla.
Mr. Knight, how did you get involved in this trial?
I got a text from one of our old employees who I then talked to for
Objection,
years.
hearsay?
Don't tell us what the text said, just how did you
Okay,
get involved?
I got a text from, I got a,
That's still hearsay, You're under
Okay.
objection.
No. Overruled.
Thank you. Go on, Mr. Knight.
I was asked if it was,
no.
I'll sustain
Objection,
that.
hearsay?
apologize.
What did you,
I got a
what did
text,
you receive a text? Okay.
yes.
From
and
whom?
From a former employee.
Okay. And how long had it been since you had heard from this former employee?
Approximately 5 years.
And did you contact Mr. Depp or any of his attorneys?
Objection leading?
Overruled.
Overruled, bitch.
I did not.
How did you get in touch with Mr. Depp's attorneys?
They got in touch with me.
Objection, hearsay?
Overruled.
Overruled.
Go on,
Sono
Mr.
lì.
Knight.
They reached out to me.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't have an objection right now.
Thank you.
It's only if he talks more.
Next question.
And how do you feel about participating in this trial?
Objection, relevance?
It's extremely relevant considering that they have accused him of being.
Overruled.
Thank you.
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
I'm happy to tell what I saw, and that's the extent of it. I really don't care outside of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knight. Nothing
All
further.
right. I assume this witness is not subject to recall. Is that correct? All right. Sir, you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Your next witness? Or is it going to be a deposition, or is it going to?
Apologies, Your Honor. Thank you. Dr. Shaw.
Okay,
Plaintiff
Dr.
calls
Shaw.
Dr. Shaw.
Okay.
Allora, mamma mia. Vai Camillona nazionale. Vi dovevo parlare di qualcosa, chat, non mi ricordo se avevamo rimandato un argomento. Twitter. Guardate. Scusatemi. Guardate com'era Amber. Guardate. Ve lo metto 2 per, non importa quello che dice, guardate il modo di fare e di parlare.
My name is Richard John Shaw.
Dr. Shaw, can you please describe your educational background?
I'm a psychiatrist. I went to medical school at the University of London in England. I went straight after high school. That's actually the system in the British
Questa
medical system.
era lei di prima.
I did 2 years of preclinical training.
Era molto più bella, sono d'accordo con te.
3 years of
Dr.
clinical
Schultz,
work
chi sei?
with patients. Following that, I moved to New Zealand to do an internship. It was an internship in neurology, medicine, surgery,
Era
and
gnocca, sì.
psychiatry. I spent 3 years in New Zealand and I did a year of psychiatry residency training. Excuse me. And following that, excuse me.
Non ho capito chi è lui.
Following that, I moved here to the United States for the first time and did a residency in adult psychiatry at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, which is in New York. That was 4 years of training in the Bronx. And I also did some subspecialty training in family therapy.
Ok, cosa fa? Psicologo?
Family therapy.
Neurologo?
As in my 4th year. And after that, I moved to California, and I've worked at Stanford. I studied at Stanford. I did a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry, and I've been at Stanford pretty much since then.
Psiconeuro, grazie.
Dr. Shaw, what is your current position?
I'm a professor of psychiatry in the Department of Psychiatry at Stanford. I also run what's called the
Esattamente lei, grazie.
at the Children's Hospital at Stanford.
Grazie.
What, if any, professional certifications have you received?
Stanford.
I have what's called board certification in adult and general psychiatry. I obtained that from the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology in 1991. And then I obtained subspecialty board
Lo portano
certification
dentro come
in
esperto.
psychiatry in 1993.
Are you a member of any professional organizations in the field of psychiatry?
Yes, I am. I'm a member of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. I'm also a member of the Academy of Consultation Liaison Psychiatry.
How long have you been practicing psychiatry?
Lo portano come esperto.
If you include my training in psychiatry residency in the US, that would be since 1985.
Is that approximately 35 years?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. What percentage of your practice involves treating patients?
Yeah, approximately 3/4 of my time is working with patients. I work in the pediatric hospital, treating a combination of mainly children and adolescents with severe
Ragazzi, il
medical
riepilogo,
conditions.
portate pazienza, ve lo devo
Also
fare alla
working
fine
with,
perché oggi stanno
parents
cadendo
of
delle
children who have
bombe.
severe medical conditions. I also consult to the pediatric emergency room and we evaluate patients who show up with suicide attempts and other serious situations.
What does the remaining quarter of your practice entail?
Well, as a professor, I have to do a number of academic activities. So I do research, I do a lot of teaching, I give lectures, I supervise residents, medical students, and fellows in psychiatry. I do some administrative work. Yeah, so it's a pretty diverse, varied day and week.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your research and academic work?
Yeah, a lot of my research has involved looking at the issue of trauma and PTSD in parents who have medically fragile children.
Esperto per Johnny Depp, piega tutte le dichiarazioni fatte dall'altra dottoressa Hughes, che ha detto che Amber soffre di PTSD. Abbiamo visto come soffre di PTSD.
To try to help parents, provide support and treatment to reduce their symptoms of trauma.
Have you published articles or books in your area of expertise?
Non è coinvolto, è un esperto.
Yes, I have. I've published approximately 70 or probably closer to 80 peer-reviewed manuscripts.
Lo portano per offrire la sua opinione professionale, non per offrire una testimonianza.
Published a number of book chapters on various topics, approximately 30. And I have
Dr.
published 3
Schultz.
textbooks, one of which has gone into a second edition on topics that are related to my area of expertise. And
Curry aveva fatto una diagnosi perfetta di disturbo bipolare della personalità e histrionic personality disorder mentre
Have you published a book through the APA?
Actually, all of those books were published.
Mentre la
through
dottoressa
the
Hughes
APA,
aveva fatto una
American
diagnosi
Psychiatric
assolutamente di
Association.
parte.
We have a publishing house, and that's been my publishing company.
What is the APA?
The APA, the American Psychiatric Association, not to be confused with the American Psychological
Esatto,
Association,
Lelo.
is a professional organization that represents psychiatrists in the US. The last time
Non è
I
quello delle
looked at this,
scarpe.
I think there's about 37 or 38,000 members. And the APA has many different roles. One of it is advocacy in psychiatry in the US, but it also has an important role.
Gliel'hanno
in terms of
diagnosticate tutte e due però se non
education.
sbaglio,
So
Iria.
they host an annual scientific meeting every year in which psychiatrists will present their research. It publishes a number of journals in the field, and
Grazie Anna.
from time, well, fairly frequently it publishes guidelines for professional practice or about ethical guidelines that they hope that the members will follow as part of their practice.
What ways are you involved with the APA?
Nell'era dell'internet nulla passa inosservato. Lo troverai su YouTube.
I also present at the scientific meetings. I last
No
presented
recap, ma la bomba più grossa che ce la puoi dire? Testimone inatteso oculare, proprietario del trailer park dove hanno fatto la festa che ha smentito la storia di Amber? Testimone oculare? Tanto per dirne uno. O preferisci forse il direttore generale della divisione cinematografica di DC che ha dichiarato che Amber Heard è stata allontanata per la mancanza di intesa con Jason Momoa e non per i tweet né di Depp né di Wallman né di nessun altro? Vuoi altro? Il direttore di visione cinema Warner Bros. Che ha detto che l'hanno allontanata indipendentemente dalle accuse.
Several years ago, I don't remember exactly when.
Have you given any public presentations in the field of psychiatry?
Yes, that's part of our work as an academic psychiatrist is to lecture, to give presentations. So I present fairly frequently at
solo se fanno causa per spergiuro.
To give grand round presentations at different medical centers, including University of Pennsylvania and Harvard. So that's just part of I think our role is to try to educate our colleagues about our work.
Have you testified as an expert in the field of psychiatry before?
Yes, I have.
On how many occasions?
I would estimate, in terms of deposition and trial testimony, approximately 50 times in the past 15, 20 years.
What type of cases did you testify as an expert in?
They're pretty varied. So some of them have been medical malpractice. I've also done a number of cases evaluating victims who've
Penso che sia normale avere
subject
testimonianze
to
false,
physical,
Ombre.
sexual assault or trauma.
What
No!
work were you asked to do in this case?
La smentiscono?
My role in this case was to give my opinions about the testimony and opinions of Dr. Spiegel, whom you heard from yesterday morning.
And what work have you done to form your opinion?
I was present yesterday in court listening to his testimony. I have viewed his
Dr. Spiegel è il pazzo di
depositions.
ieri.
He had 2 depositions earlier this year, and I watched those depositions.
Personalità leggermente diverse.
I've also read a lot of deposition testimony. For example, testimony by Mr. Depp psychiatrist, Dr. Blaustein, by his physician, Dr. Kipper, and nurse Debbie Lloyd. I've reviewed depositions by many of the therapists involved in this case, including Dr. Banks, the relationship consultant.
Lo stiamo a buttare per il culo, Johnny.
Dr.
Prepara, sputazza.
Cohen, who was Miss Heard's
Ce lo butto senza sputo.
therapist. and I think Dr. Anderson, who I think provided some couples therapy. I've also reviewed the medical records of Dr. Kipper and Dr. Blaustein, and some various email communications. I think a lot of the information that has been talked about here.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to offer Dr. Shaw as an expert in the field of psychiatry.
Any objection?
Can we approach?
Okay.
Approccia. Ok, intanto vi faccio vedere. Vediamo un po' cosa volevo farvi vedere. No, questo è falso, questo è fake. Questo secondo me è falso. Questo mi sa di fake. Questo mi sa di fake.
So any objection?
Può essere, ma non attendibile. Per me non attendibile.
He'll be moved as an expert. Thank you.
Fate vedere, Umbre.
Dr. Shaw, you testified.
Li ho visti comunque anch'io confabulare ieri, eh?
Yes, that's correct.
And to reorient the jury, can you please generally describe the main areas in which Dr. Spiegel testified?
Yes, he...
Objection, Your Honor. They heard.
Ma lei ha 13 anni.
What's his opinion?
All right.
Foundation to reorient them?
That's okay. We can move forward.
Okay. Do you have an opinion of Dr. Spiegel's testimony?
Yes, I do.
And what is your opinion?
I have a couple of primary opinions. The first is that my opinion is that he violated the ethical principles that are outlined in the Goldwater Rule when he gave his opinions about Mr. Depp, specifically with relationship to personality traits and his cognitive abilities.
Lui è l'esperto di
My second
Johnny.
primary opinion would be that
Di Depp.
that Dr. Spiegel's opinions were unreliable and that he had insufficient information.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right. You're going to approach?
Yeah.
Comunque tagliano il microfono quando è così. Quella era una ripresa col microfono aperto, probabilmente di un altro canale, ma non ci voglio credere. Vorrei capire la fonte di quella roba lì. Fatemi guardare, ma perché qua, se è veramente così, è enorme.
Smoking is very highly correlated with lung cancer, right?
Yeah, and there's certainly a link to lung cancer. Yes, the literature fully supports everything I just said through that interaction.
Said we can't definitively Dr.
Cazzo! No! Cazzo, ho aperto il microfono. È vero! È vero! Chat! I will lie in my testimony. I will lie in my testimony. Sono senza parole. Sono senza parole, è vero. Mentirò. Mentirò nella mia testimonianza. È un problema? Gli chiede. Sono senza parole. Sono senza parole. Mentirò nella mia testimonianza. C'è qualcosa su cui non posso mentire? Mentirò nella mia testimonianza. C'è qualcosa di cui non sono autorizzato a mentire? No. Wow! Cazzo, è vero! Non l'avrei mai immaginato. Mai. Non l'avrei mai immaginato. Volete il minutaggio? Il minutaggio lo trovate. Vi mando il link. Sono esterrefatto. L'ho preso dalla diretta di ieri, L'ho preso dalla diretta di ieri. Non ho preso un estratto con l'audio elaborato. È la diretta di ieri. Non ho preso... Ragazzi, c'eravate voi, testimoni. Subito ho messo in dubbio la veridicità di quella roba perché mi sembrava possibilissimo fare un fake. Sono andato a vedere l'intera live di ieri, ho beccato il momento e lo dice veramente. Il giudice potrebbe non aver sentito se i microfoni sono wireati per la registrazione e non per loro. C'era un ragazzo che molto gentilmente mi aveva fatto
you mentioned
un'analisi.
the Goldwater rule. What led up to the publication of the Goldwater rule?
Scusate il volume.
The Goldwater rule came about in response to an incident that occurred during the 1964 presidential election.
Grazie,
Senator
Beppe.
Barry Goldwater was running as a Republican candidate, and there was a magazine called Fact Magazine that started a campaign to discredit Senator Goldwater. And they obtained a
mandato il link.
list from the AMA and sent out a single survey questionnaire to about 12,000 psychiatrists in the US.
Grazie, Dil.
Asking if they felt that Senator Goldwater
No,
was
sono loro, Gioele.
fit to run for office. And about 2,000 psychiatrists responded, 1,000 of whom expressed very negative opinions about Senator Goldwater and made comments such as, for example, he was a megalomaniac, he was a paranoid schizophrenic, that he had narcissistic personality disorder. And as a result of that, he was replaced as a candidate and then went on to sue Fact Magazine for defamation of character. And he was successful in that lawsuit.
Senza parole.
And in response to this incident, the American Psychiatric Association, that I think was really concerned about how psychiatry was being represented and statements psychiatrists were making about someone they had never met or evaluated, issued the Goldwater Rule. And the main premise of the Goldwater Rule was that
risvolti questa settimana fanno le arringhe e poi devono raggiungere l'unanimità la giuria. Potrebbe volerci giorni o mesi o ore.
Unless they had personally and closely evaluated them.
Sono perfettamente consapevole, Manuz, del motivo per cui sto aspettando che qualcuno mi isoli l'audio.
They wanted to make sure that psychiatric illness wasn't being stigmatized. They wanted to ensure that individuals weren't defamed by statements made by a psychiatrist that weren't backed up by medical evidence. And
sta facendo già Beppe il gommista, se ne occupa Beppe. Lo stavo cercando ma ho troppi DM su Discord e è sceso troppo giù, non lo trovo più subito.
Psychiatric opinion, people generally like to take that seriously, and the APA wanted to make sure that those opinions were credible and could be relied upon.
Have there been any updates to the Goldwater Rule?
Yeah, since 1973, which was when the Goldwater Rule first came out, there have been a number of revisions and publications by the APA. They're called annotations in psychiatry, in which the Goldwater Rule has been better defined and expanded to some degree. So, for example, in 2017, in this publication, the APA reasserted that it was not ethical to provide a psychiatric or professional opinion about someone who had not been evaluated personally by that psychiatrist. That it was unethical to provide an evaluation without obtaining consent from that individual. They also sort of really kind of defined what a professional opinion is, and how they defined it is that an opinion that a psychiatrist expresses about someone's speech, behavior, or any characteristic about that person, if that opinion is made using the expertise, experience, and knowledge inherent in the practice of psychiatry, that is considered a professional opinion. So it might include making a diagnosis or not making a diagnosis. And the other,
Hai un team sì, con la pipa.
2017 document were that the APA specified.
Ho bisogno di un quarto schermo, chat.
To give an opinion about someone, about the diagnosis or personality characteristics, whatever, that they have to follow an appropriate methodology. They have to do an evaluation that follows the standard practice of a psychiatrist here in the US. And if they don't do that, they are considered to be,
Mandalo per mail agli avvocati.
Of both the psychiatrist and the psychiatric profession.
Penso sia impossibile.
And this revision of the Goldwater rule definitely received a lot of support. The president of the APA at the time stated that breaking the Goldwater rule.
Penso che comunque non possano usarlo. Non possano usarlo perché comunque non è avvenuto sul podio.
Stigmatizing and definitely unethical. So that was a very strong statement from the president of the APA.
What other medical organizations have weighed in on this issue?
Yeah, the number of organizations have their own sort of version of the Goldwater rule. The American Medical Association, that represents physicians in the US, has an annual meeting, and they have what's called a Council of Ethical
Esatto, nessuno, è esattamente come dici tu, secondo me.
In 2017 in Honolulu, and they came out with their own statement about the issue of whether physicians can provide opinions without directly evaluating somebody. And their opinion was that physicians should refrain
È avvenuto per giuramento,
giving a psychiatric diagnosis about any public figure, including celebrities and people in the media.
Are there exceptions to the Goldwater rule?
There are exceptions, yeah, and I think Dr. Spiegel
Season 2, Lucius,
had a lot to say about this yesterday when he was saying that if you couldn't express an opinion without evaluating someone, it sort of made the whole specialty of or role of experts in the court sort of null and void. But there are exceptions and situations in which an expert can give testimony in court. So one good example would be if there was a medical malpractice case, or if there was a case about a patient who'd committed suicide and the courts wanted to find out whether the psychiatrist had followed appropriate practice, the expert can review.
Ma a porte chiuse chissà quante cose losche fanno gli avvocati, ma pure Camille. Vorremmo vederle a porte aperte le cose losche di Camille, però
have sufficient information, for example, about the diagnoses, about the treatment, about how the patient was responding or not responding to treatment.
Did you form an opinion about whether Dr. Spiegel complied with the Goldwater rule?
Well, my opinion is that he did not. He expressed a number of professional opinions about Mr. Depp that we heard about yesterday. And again, he did so without an
Sto per bere del Gatorade, è al 90% acqua, quindi sto bene.
He did not follow the guidelines of the APA in the 2017 revision, where it was considered important that there be sufficient information obtained by that expert.
Which, per favore.
So I would definitely felt that his conduct, unfortunately, did violate the Goldwater rule.
And specifically, what opinions of that Dr. Spiegel gave yesterday do you feel violated the Goldwater rule?
Yeah, I think that, well, there were sort of two primary ones. The first that you heard about was that Dr. Spiegel had professional opinions about Mr. Depp's personality. And he talked a lot about how he believed that Mr. Depp had narcissistic personality traits. So, and he also, talked a lot about narcissistic personality disorder. So, narcissistic personality disorder is a diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's called the DSM-5 for short. It's a diagnostic manual published by the APA.
Objection, Your Honor. Can we break for a moment?
Okay.
La Goldwater Rule, faccio una sintesi, se ho capito bene, Daniele, è una regola per il quale professionisti del settore neurologico e psichiatrico non possono fare una diagnosi di una persona traendo dalle loro apparizioni pubbliche. Cioè, se non hai parlato direttamente con la persona, se non l'hai conosciuta direttamente, stai zitto, perché le apparizioni pubbliche potrebbero essere recitate, potrebbe essere che stanno utilizzando un set di facce e comportamenti differenti, dovrebbe essere questo, se ho capito bene. E lo standard etico delle diagnosi, se ho capito bene, è nato da un precedente che c'è stato in passato di un presidente degli Stati Uniti, appunto Goldwater, che era stato erroneamente diagnosticato per via delle sue apparizioni, per cui è nata la Goldwater Rule. Se ho capito bene, ma potrei essermi sbagliato.
Go ahead, Dr.
Ci stanno lavorando i forensi.
Sure. So I was just talking about narcissistic personality disorder in the DSM-5. So the diagnostic criteria for that are, I'm not going to remember every word about this, but essentially it's a pattern of grandiosity, a need for admiration,
Sembra Amber.
a lack of empathy that's demonstrated by that person since young adulthood. And the DSM-5 has nine specific criteria.
Esatto.
And for someone to meet the diagnosis, you have to meet 5 of those criteria. And so when, as a psychiatrist, we're trying to make a diagnosis of any personality disorder or any diagnosis in general, the normal professional guidelines would dictate that we would do a very careful diagnostic interview. And there are actually interviews specifically written to assess personality disorders. It's also possible to have the individual fill out questionnaires. There's something called the Narcissistic Personality Inventory. This is a 40-item checklist that taps into various components of narcissistic personality disorder. And it's also possible to get psychological testing, like the MMPI that I think you heard about in reference to one of the other experts here. So with all of this information, including collateral information
Se non sei sub, Moshe, devi solo chiedere un permesso a un moderatore o a me per un link, perché ho una protezione che mi protegge da eventuali persone che entrano in live per la prima volta e buttano link bannabili. Quindi se vuoi rimettere il link, dimmelo, ti do il permesso.
So in the case of Dr. Spiegel, he had none of this information, even though he came out and stated with what he described as a degree of medical certainty that Mr. Depp had narcissistic personality traits. And if you remember somewhat towards the end of his testimony yesterday, he was asked to, since he couldn't provide any documentation from the medical record about narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic personality traits, he was asked about what is referred to a lot in his testimony.
Abbiamo commentato tutto il colore del completo di oggi.
Information that he obtained from depositions.
Rider in Lighthouse, tutto qui.
Text messages, from emails.
Dovrebbero averli annullati.
Whatever. And so
e lo stesso commento di tutti, Q-Mew.
5 examples of record evidence that would make it seem like Mr. Depp met criteria for narcissistic personality traits. And I'll just mention a couple of them, just to illustrate my opinion, is that testimony did not really hold together. So he stated, for example, that one of the criteria for narcissism is narcissistic personality disorder is a sense of entitlement. And the example Dr. Spiegel gave is that he believed that Ms. Heard married him for his money. So clearly, sense of entitlement is from a psychiatry perspective, that's very different from a belief that someone wanted you for your money. A second example that was given was that he was asked to give an example of how Mr. Depp had shown that he was envious of others, which is another criterion for narcissistic personality disorder. And the example that Dr. Spiegel gave is that Mr. Depp was jealous of Ms. Heard
Anche a me piace
she was having an affair with Mr. Franco. Now, if we look at these two terms as a psychiatrist, there's a big difference between being envious and being jealous. As a psychiatrist,
anche se mi piace molto di più la monocromia di questo signore.
Somebody wants something that someone else has, and it makes them feel bad.
I think this is going beyond his
investigation. He's giving his opinion as to how Dr. Spiegel violated the Goldwater rule with respect to his testimony about narcissistic personality traits.
He did, but now sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. Okay, and you mentioned 2 major examples. What was the second one?
The second one was confusing being envious with being jealous.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Shaw. I mean, you mentioned 2 major examples of ways Dr. Spiegel violated the Goldwater rule. What is the second?
Oh, sure. So the other big category had to do with
un altro esperto, Darkness,
evaluation of Mr. Depp's cognitive abilities. And his general opinion was that Mr. Depp had deficits in his memory, in his attention, in his processing speed, that he had word-finding difficulties. Again, Dr. Spiegel did not evaluate Mr. Depp, and the information that he relied upon, there were two pieces of information. The first was that he watched a very long deposition that Mr. Depp
Con tutte queste finestre ho paura di far vedere in chat roba che non devo far vedere.
Flown back from London to the East Coast.
23 qualcosa su Acco come ieri.
He made observations.
Poi ci facciamo 2 spari su Squad.
Behavior in that deposition, and felt that he could opine or give an opinion about processing speed.
Venerdì le arringhe aged e poi il verdetto non appena raggiungono l'unanimità, robe dietro le quinte, cioè niente di che. Sono in Virginia, Dash. Benvenuto o benvenuta.
Cognitive functioning that is often done, and
a me piace il completo del completo.
Testified that Dr. Blaustein had administered the mini mental status examination.
Sì, può essere che può essere, non lo so, magari wipeano.
Although, you know, from the records, all we know is that.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain the objection.
Dr. Shaw, without going into Dr. Blaustein's record, what information does a mini mental exam provide?
Objection, Your Honor. It's beyond the scope of his estimation.
Overruled as to that limited question.
Yeah, so the mini mental status is it's a series of about 10 or 11 questions and tasks that someone completes, and you get a score out of 30. What Dr.
Non è Depp,
Spiegel testified was that
non è Depp.
Could not recall 3 words.
È il testimone matto di ieri che dice all'avvocato che mentirà.
As an example of Mr. Depp having cognitive deficits that he specifically attributed to Mr. Depp's alcohol and substance abuse. And he really did not have sufficient information. I liken a mini mental status exam. It's like taking someone's temperature.
Giovedì in teoria non c'è il processo.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Now it's probably a good time for a break.
Okay.
Break?
Sure. All right.
Grazie, ne avevo bisogno.
Break, but we didn't. So we're going to go ahead and take our afternoon break for 15 minutes. Do not discuss the case and do not do any outside research, okay? You can stay right there, doctor.
«15 minuti di pausa. Giovedì in teoria dovrebbe essere solo per gli avvocati e io pensavo di farmi squad al pomeriggio, Tarkov la sera con Canta e Frene e poi di nuovo squad. Chi guarda l'intervista di lei, hai di nuovo il link per favore?
All right. You're excused for the 15 minutes too, sir, doctor. Okay, we'll come back at 4:17 then. Finish the day.
4 di... ok. Intanto il nostro analista audio forense mi sta boostando quella clip. Bad, se ne sta occupando un ragazzo che mi aveva aiutato con la clip del cheater. Grazie, Ana.
Because there were so many other people. Okay, we good? Yeah. Okay. Congratulations, you did a really good job in this. And I was just wondering, I mean, this is a pretty heavy-duty script when you look at it. What was it that kind of resonated with you when you read it, that you wanted to do it?
You know, it's so important. Hold on one second.
No problem.
Courtney, I can't do this if people are coming in and out of the door. It's really distracting. Extremely. Thank you.
Do you want to start it? We'll start again?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
No,
my mom.
I didn't go to Toronto. I was filming my
Because
show.
there were so many other people. Okay, we good? Yeah. Okay.
Avete capito, chat?
You did a really good job in this, and I was just wondering. I mean, this is a pretty heavy-duty script when you look at it. What was it that kind of resonated with you when you read it, that you wanted to do it?
You know, it's so important. Hold on one second.
No problem.
Courtney, I can't do this if people are coming in and out of the door. It's really distracting. Extremely. Thank you.
Bella quanto volete. Bella quanto volete. Ma io fossi stato in Johnny Depp, avrei visto delle bandiere rosse sventolare sulla vetta del Monte Rushmore. Bandiere rosse gigantesche che avvisano: è pazza! È pazza! C'è proprio bandiere rosse! Porca miseria, ragazzi. Porca miseria. Ma scherziamo? Porca la miseria, ma stiamo scherzando, dai. Una cosa e via e basta, ma mi accontento di una foto, ma stiamo scherzando. Ma manco con un bastone di 100 metri, ragazzi, non ne vale la pena. Your people deserve better than this. Il vostro pipo vale di più. Il vostro pipo vale di più, chat. Non ci sono scuse. Non ci sono scuse. Cioè, è veramente come usare un rospo velenoso al posto di una flashlight. No, 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 no. No, per me no. Riesci a farmelo sentire, Yoshimitsu? Esatto, Drain. Who is the mona that entered bashing the door? Sì, su Discord, è perfetto. No, ragazzi, no, 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 minchia, no. Non so come dirvelo. Your people is better. No, 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 no. No. Non ha senso, ragazzi. Non è la più gnocca del mondo. Ce ne sono migliaia belle come lei. Migliaia ce ne sono belle come lei. Non importa. Non importa se è bella. Non vale la pena. L'amore cieco. Trovamele, te lo assicuro. A guardare da pazzo un po'. Oh, ragazzi, cazzi vostri. Cazzi vostri. Io me ne lavo le mani. Che telefono ho? Un iPhone 12, perché? Stampato caricatore? Yeah! Venuto uno spettacolo. Ragazzi, no. Margot Robbie anche non mi piace. Ho bisogno di quella clip boostata. No, trovo che sia super piatta Margot Robbie, giuro. Ana de Armas, quello mi cogli nel mio punto debole. No, 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 no. Margot Robbie piattissima. No, probabilmente non sono tipo da bionde, che vi devo dire? Evidentemente non mi piacciono le bionde. Io ho bisogno di vedere la Third in lacrime. L'ho visto Wolf of Wall Street, è una bellezza troppo classica, non fa per me. Gal Gadot mi piace tantissimo. È una bellezza troppo classica, non ho quel gusto lì io personalmente. Grazie Anna. La Daddario,
Desire and repulsion. Who? Desire and repulsion. The best. Goals. A beautiful concept. That one I'd say worth dying for. Who cares? The best exile. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? The best exile. Kiwis. So that's when you should ask me about Barnaby Joyce. Kiwi. I mean, really? Why? When chocolate is not available, yes please, Jason Momoa, otherwise known as Mira. She has her own name. Haven't found it yet. At least I hope not. Who?
Se non fosse stato per Aquaman, chi te se inculava? Niente. Comunque no. E ne esistono altre miliardi come lei? No. Per me no. Ah, giusto, scimmia. Per me no. Per me è simply not. Non lo so, Thunder, giuro, non lo so. Sarò troppo schizzinoso, esigente, che vi devo dire? Il file è su Telegram. Ah, me lo puoi mandare su Discord, per favore. Non ce l'ho Telegram su questo computer. Kravitz non mi piace, per esempio. O magari sono scemo, Machox. Ah, ma a me in privato, Yoshimitsu. Non sono viziato. Allora, a mia discolpa, sono fidanzato con la stessa ragazza da 12 anni, quindi forse ho dei gusti ben precisi. A mia discolpa. La ragazza si chiama Prudolfina in chat, quindi se non la vedete in chat non c'è. Siamo tantissimi. Non c'è la ragazza. Non c'è. Ma non vuol dire che io mi stia comportando così perché pensavo ci fosse, giuro. Quando ci sarà la base economica per farlo. Recap! Ah, scusatemi, giusto, è il momento giusto per un recap. Allora, oggi hanno testimoniato praticamente solo per Johnny Depp e abbiamo iniziato con una bomba galattica, ovvero Walter Amada, boss di Warner Brothers, che ha dichiarato che Amber Heard ha perso il suo ruolo in Aquaman 2, indipendentemente da quello che si è detto nei social media. L'ha perso perché non c'era chimica, non c'era intesa con Jason Momoa, e evidentemente non c'è stato il successo che speravano, non per quello che ha detto né Depp, né Waldman, né nessun altro. E questo non l'ha detto un esperto, né uno scudiero, l'ha detto il direttore della divisione cinematografica. Giusto, abbiamo iniziato con una motion to strike non accolta, l'ho omessa per non dover spiegare che cos'è, bla bla bla. Comunque, Walter Amada ha detto questo. È tornato Richard Marx, dealmaker tosto, di Hollywood, uno dei classici di Hollywood, che smonta l'esperta Arnold con l'esperienza diretta. Il contratto di Amber era già generosissimo. In poche parole ha detto quello che l'esperta di ieri ha detto, dicendo che Amber poteva aspettare di guadagnarsi di più avanti, rinegoziando la sua posizione con Warner Brothers, non è verosimile, perché il contratto che le avevano offerto era già estremamente generoso. E ad Hollywood non è che rinegozi il tuo contratto solo perché sei stato famoso, lo rinegozi se viene rinegoziato. Quindi se il contratto di Amber diceva ok, farai 3 film, Justice League, Aquaman 1, Aquaman 2, se lo studio decide che ha bisogno di lei per Aquaman 3, vuol dire che deve rinegoziare il contratto, e a quel punto Amber è nella posizione di dire ok, però per il 3 voglio di più. È un po' il discorso Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, non mi ricordo come si chiama l'attore di Capitan America. Comunque nel loro caso spesso abbiamo sentito che rinegoziavano per prendere cifre pazzesche, ma perché il loro contratto scadeva, bisognava riprenderlo in mano, e allora ne approfittavano. Quindi lui con la sua esperienza cinquantennale, Chris Evans, grazie, con la sua esperienza cinquantennale, ha detto che non è vero quello che ha detto l'esperta è esperta di gossip ma non di affari veri e propri, e quindi l'ha smontata. Poi ha parlato Michael Spinder, analista forense di danni, che sostanzialmente ha ulteriormente smontato la dichiarazione di Arnold dicendo che i 48 milioni di danni di Amber se li ha tirati fuori dal cappello. Poi è tornato per la seconda volta Doug Bania, che è un analista di Google, e ha distrutto l'analisi di Snell, riprendendo i suoi dati, riarrangiandoli in modo da dimostrare delle gravi lacune nell'analisi di Snell, che era quello di Unix, quello super esperto. Poi è arrivata la bomba H di oggi, ovvero il testimone oculare di Hicksville. Se accetti la request, ne ho 32. Mi devi dire come ti chiami. Ho 32 richieste d'amicizia. Doug Bania, analista Google, ha fatto questa roba qua. Poi la bomba H di oggi è stato il testimone oculare di Hicksville, nonché il proprietario di Hicksville, che è quel posto dove c'erano le roulottine di alluminio, le Airstream, dove accanto al falò, secondo la storia, Johnny ha quasi spezzato il polso di Whitney e picchiato Amber, insomma tutte quelle robe lì, che ha smentito tutto, ed era un testimone oculare che finora è stato completamente al di fuori del processo, per cui questa è stata la bomba, un'ulteriore smentita di una storia inventata. E adesso stavamo vedendo Dr. Schultz, psichiatra medico, che stava spiegando la Gold Water Rule, distruggendo la testimonianza dello psichiatra pazzo. Poi dicono che non servono gli appunti. Fonoril. Vai, fatto. Mi credete se vi dico che alle superiori, che durante l'università, alle superiori, insomma, nella mia esperienza didattica non prendevo appunti? E mi sento un pirla, tornando indietro lo farei 100 volte. Sto scoprendo a 30 anni il bello di prendere appunti. Vuol dire che sto perdendo la memoria, Keiko? Quello mi stai dicendo? 28, te prego. So 30. Motion to strike vuol dire che gli avvocati di Johnny hanno cercato di far cadere le accuse prima ancora di esprimere un giudizio, perché sostanzialmente sostenevano che non ci fosse proprio modo di esprimere quelle accuse, perché non stavano né in cielo né in terra, non erano fondate, ma non è stato così, quindi motion to strike respinta. No, facciamo squad, dico Zeno. Grazie Lollo. Ti ringrazio molto. Io capisco, I rely on the testers. Questo è quello che sento io adesso, senza sottotitoli. Questo è quello che sento io. I rely on the testers. Questo è quello che sento io. No, è un fake. Io sento I rely. Ascoltate bene. Ok, questa è la mia interpretazione. Chiede all'avvocato dice I rely on the testers. Io faccio affidamento alle testimonianze passate. È un problema. Questo è quello che secondo me sente. I rely on the testers. Is this a problem? Insomma, continua a chiedergli quello. Per quanto mi riguarda, lui gli dice: nella mia testimonianza faccio affidamento a quello che è già stato detto. È una cosa che posso fare, un problema? Questo sento io, quindi smentito. Pipa dello smentimento. Grazie, fonte segreta, per aver boostato l'audio. Caso smentito.
He's just opining as to, or is responding to Dr. Spiegel's.
L'ho fatto,
testimony
sì, sì.
No, he's opining as to what Dr. Spiegel could have said, but it's past the, whether he, about the
All
Goldwater
right.
rule.
Non è I won't lie, è troppo breve. È I rely, è troppo... È I rely. Che sembra I will lie, ma è I will lie. I rely. I rely. Troppo breve. I rely, sono sicuro.
Could conduct the type of neuropsychological testing that I was mentioning. You can't establish the presence of cognitive deficits without
Objection,
a battery
Your
of
Honor.
tests.
Objection, again, this is beyond the Goldwater rule.
Overruled.
You can't establish cognitive deficits without appropriate neuropsychological testing, and that can only be done by a psychologist or neuropsychologist. So a psychiatrist like Dr. Spiegel would be giving an opinion outside of his area of expertise if he gave an opinion about cognitive deficits that required psychological testing to be further evaluated.
Dr. Spiegel yesterday testified about the practice of forensic psychiatry. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do.
What is forensic psychiatry?
Forensic psychiatry is a specialty of psychiatry that relates to matters on the intersection between psychiatry and the law. So, for example, what we're doing today is forensic psychiatry, where a psychiatrist comes into court and gives an opinion about a matter to help the court come to an opinion.
Are there professional standards that govern the practice of forensic psychiatry?
Yes, there are.
And what organizations have issued those standards?
One of the primary organizations that has issued guidelines about the practice of forensic psychiatry is called the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law. This is an organization that represents forensic psychiatrists, and it has published guidelines about what constitutes an ethical and sound practice of doing a forensic assessment and providing a psychiatric opinion. So this guideline, I think was published in 2015, actually contains many elements that are consistent with the Goldwater rule. So, for example, it states that for a forensic assessment to be done, there has to be informed consent, and there should be a very thorough, comprehensive evaluation that would include reviewing past records, past psychiatric history. It would include doing what's called a mental status examination, which is a careful evaluation of someone's mood.
Che altro deve parlare oggi?
Things of that nature.
Domani faranno Kate Moss, sicuro.
And, the guidelines do state that it is reasonable or permitted to provide an opinion without an evaluation, but if you're going to do that, there's some things that you have to really make clear in your opinion when you express that opinion. And the first is that you have to acknowledge the limitations of your opinion and not, like Dr. Spiegel, say that his opinion was held with a degree of medical certainty.
Accusa Andromeda.
You have to explain what's missing, what data you did not have that you were not able to rely upon in coming to that opinion.
È vero,
You also have to talk about what additional information you would need to come to that opinion. And even though these guidelines say it's permissible to do this, the text is still, I think.
Sai che noto anche un'inflessione australiana nell'accento.
Statements are that opinions rendered without a proper database, which is what we as psychiatrists rely upon to make diagnoses and give opinions, professional opinions, is questionable and not generally recommended.
Comunque immaginate la tensione di testimoniare in una cosa del genere.
Dr. Spiegel's testimony with respect to these practice guidelines?
Yes, I did.
And what is your opinion?
Well, my opinion is that he did not follow those guidelines. So, for example, he did not have consent. He did not do even a basic evaluation of Mr. Depp.
Appunto,
when he gave his opinions, as I just mentioned, he said they were opinions that he had to a degree of medical certainty, and he did not
sta buttando merda su quello di ieri.
make any statements about what other additional information he would have wanted to make that opinion. So, for example,
sì, infatti
when asked
lo
about
sento un pelo quella flessione,
should
gente.
psychological testing be performed, he said most patients don't have access to that, which is actually not at all true. I mean, every medical school has neuropsychologists that can do testing. So I think that was an unfortunate statement. So I think those are the primary ways in which the Goldwater Rule was violated, and the practice guidelines were not adhered to.
Dr. Shah, yesterday Dr. Spiegel was talking about correlation and causation. What is the difference between correlation and causation?
Objection. It's not in his designation.
It is. We can approach and I can show you.
Okay.
All right.
Minchia. Il medico ha smentito che abbia perso il dito a causa di Amber? No, ancora no. Non è Camille questa, è lei, è un'altra avvocatessa, sempre di Depp, ma non è Camille. Obiezione? Mo vengo te spacco. Eh sì, Darkness. Beh ragazzi, non penso che ci siano stagisti nella scrivania di uno come Johnny Depp, considerato i soldi in palio, considerato quello che c'è in palio anche in termini di immagine e carriera, penso che siano solo assoluti mostri.
Go ahead, Dr. Shah.
Yes, so the difference between a correlation and causation.
Avvocatessa?
Correlation is a statistical analysis of a relationship between two different factors. So in Dr. Spiegel's
Centinaia di
testimony,
migliaia
he
di
talked
dollari,
about, there being a correlation between
Esiste
opinions he
avvocatessa,
had
no?
about Mr. Depp, his narcissistic personality traits.
E non voglio quelle
his substance
stronzate
abuse,
di
things of that
femminismo dove non si può dire dottore ma
nature. So
dottora,
the
non voglio
correlation
quello.
doesn't say
Esiste
anything
avvocatessa,
about whether or
ok.
not these factors caused that, the behavior he was discussing. Perhaps one of the easiest ways I could describe this difference between correlation and causation is if we look at the issue of measles, if you bear with me. So there's
E
a
chissà
correlation
quante ore ha
between
dedicato,
being
Anna.
young and catching measles. Now we know that measles is not caused by being young. Measles is caused by a virus. But young children have not been exposed to the virus. They don't have the immunity, so they have a higher rate of measles. So the difference statistically is, well the difference is between causation and correlation is illustrated by that example. So another way I might put this is if we had 100 people in a room, just bringing it back to the issue of IPV that Dr. Spiegel was testifying about. Let's say we had 70 people who had all the risk factors for IPV and 30 people who had no risk factors for IPV. So what can we say about those 70 people? We can't say that any single one of those people has perpetrated IPV, even though they may have all the risk factors. And if we look at the 30 people who have no risk factors, we also can't say whether or not they have perpetrated IPV. So the actual presence of risk factors for IPV that Dr. Spiegel was talking about, they say absolutely nothing about what happened in this case.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. Nothing further.
All right, cross-examination.
Potrebbe essere che oggi finiscono in tempo, sapete?
Good afternoon, Dr. Shah.
Good afternoon.
You're not offering any opinion as to Mr. Depp's psychology, correct?
That's correct.
And you testified a lot about the Goldwater rule. You know of no case where an expert has been excluded from testifying based on the Goldwater rule, correct?
I don't know about the whole universe of cases. It's possible, but I don't know personally about one.
And you, before this case, you've never offered an opinion on the Goldwater rule before, correct?
That's correct.
And you've never written an article on the Goldwater rule, correct?
I have not.
And you've never given a presentation on the Goldwater rule, correct?
I have not.
And you've never been on any committees regarding the Goldwater rule, correct?
I have not.
Okay. And you agree that you've testified that there are exceptions to the Goldwater rule about having to interview the subject, right?
Yes.
Davvero, Anna?
And you understand that Dr. Spiegel requested to meet with Mr. Depp twice, but Mr. Depp declined, correct?
I'm aware of that.
And Dr. Spiegel stated in his designation and at trial yesterday that he did not meet with Mr. Depp, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can we put up Defendant's Exhibit 1904? Dr. Shaw, have you seen the opinions of the Ethics Committee on the Principles of Medical Ethics?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could turn to 79 of the PDF, it's actually, thank you. You see where it's highlighted here?
Yes.
And it says, psychiatrists have also argued that the Goldwater rule is not sound because psychiatrists are sometimes asked to render
Objection,
opinions.
hearsay.
He's an expert.
Objection, hearsay!
Without conducting an examination of an individual, examples occur in particular in certain forensic cases and consultative roles. This objection attempts to subsume the rule with its exceptions.
Cosa, Filippo?
What this objection misses, however, is that the rendering of expertise and or an opinion in these contexts is permissible because there is a court authorization for the examination or an opinion without examination. And this work is
Steram, non ce l'ho Steram, Filippo.
Including parameters for how
Ho tante richieste
and where
d'amicizia,
the
devo
information
cercarti. Un
may
attimo,
be
Filippo.
used or disseminated. You see that?
I do, yes.
And this court authorized Dr. Spiegel to testify in this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, redirect.
Dr. Shaw, Mr. Nadelhoff just asked you about the court authorization of Mr. Depp's evaluation. Are you aware that the court has twice denied Ms. Heard's request for an evaluation of Mr. Depp?
I heard that yesterday in testimony, yes.
Okay, thank you, nothing further.
All right, thank you, sir. You can either have a seat or you can leave. Thank you. Your next witness.
Boh, fine, ciao.
All right.
Che è? Deposizione? Drain, grazie dei 4 mesi. Objection. Grazie. Domani, Marcello.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Jennifer Howell, Los Angeles, California.
And what is your occupation?
I run the Art of Elysium, CEO of the Art of Elysium.
Let me just go back. Now, you've indicated that Whitney lived with you from January 2015.
No.
I'm sorry, May 2015 to April 2016. Are you absolutely certain about those dates?
I'm certain, yes. She came and went at different periods, but all of her stuff moved out of my house April 2016.
And I'm sorry, did you say you were 100% certain of that?
Questa ha vissuto con...
Yes, she did go back to Amber and Johnny's at different points, but she was still living with me during that time.
The question I asked, because you were talking at the same time Ms. Vasquez was giving an objection, was I believe that you said you were 100% certain of those dates. Is that correct?
Same with me.
All right.
Oh, you previously testified that you were the CEO for Art of Elysium. Is that correct? And are you still
Same
currently in that position?
Yes, I am.
Trenino commosso grazie
And
dei 3
how long have you been
mesi.
the CEO for Art of Elysium?
La botta di... Camilla ha obiettato così forte che ha viaggiato nel tempo.
Did our first workshop in August of 1997, filed the legal paperwork in February of 98 to set up a 501c3. So I guess
Ha causato una crepa nello spazio-tempo con un'obiezione.
Amber Heard.
At the
No,
Pineapple
Anna,
Express
davvero?
premiere is where I met she and her sister Whitney.
Do you remember approximately what year that was?
I believe it was around 2008. I'm sure that could be pulled. It was the LA premiere. I think there was probably
No, dai, Anna.
premieres, but it was the Los Angeles premiere of Pineapple Express.
Non possono aver fatto 4 ore oggi, no? Non possono aver fatto 4 ore oggi.
Was Ms. Heard there with Mr. Depp?
No, this was long before. I was a guest of James Franco, and Amber was in the movie. And so I met she and her sister at the...
Grazie, Gabut.
I mean, to be specific, at the after party of the premiere.
Did Ms. Enriquez end up working for Art of Elysium at some point?
Yes, she did.
What year did Ms. Enriquez begin working with Art of Elysium?
La faccia di
I
lei.
believe it was in 2014. I don't have those documents right in front of me.
Sono proprio
I believe
figlie
it
della
was
stessa mamma, eh.
leading into the year Amber was receiving the award.
And what was Ms. Enriquez's position at Art of Elysium?
Art salon manager, director.
Does Ms. Enriquez still work for Art of Elysium?
No.
Su che cosa non c'è dubbio, Anna?
When did that end?
Oh, 2015, I believe.
Each time you saw Mr. Depp, did you ever see him doing any illicit, illegal drugs?
Ah, ok.
Did you ever see him consuming...
So che avete
excessive
occhi
amounts
solo
of
per
alcohol?
lei.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp appear intoxicated?
Comunque ha una vaga
Did Ms. Heard
somiglianza
ever
con la
show you
tossica di Breaking Bad.
Of depicting injuries on her face or body?
No.
Did Ms. Heard ever tell you that Mr. Depp was abusive towards her?
No.
Mr. Depp paying your legal fees, Ms. Howell, for this deposition and the testimony you've provided in the UK action?
He is not.
Who is?
Myself.
Ooh. Ooh.
Do you feel any particular sense of loyalty towards Mr. Depp?
None at all.
Do you feel any sense of loyalty towards Ms. Heard?
None at all.
Ms. Howell, do you recognize this check as the check that the Art of Elysium received on behalf of Ms. Heard for a donation, an anonymous donation of $250,000?
Yes. Yes.
I silenzi di Camille.
I believe you testified previously that you understood the anonymous donor was Elon Musk. Is that true?
Yes.
If I could please have Exhibit 4 brought up. And for the record, it's based stamp JH 22 through 29.
But for
Ok. Grazie.
Do you recognize this document, Ms. Howell? And if you need to
Sì,
scroll
però
through the
guardavo in
pages, feel
generale.
free.
Can you scroll down? Yeah, I recognize that.
And what is this?
That is an email, I believe, I sent to Whitney.
Scrolling up to the first page of this attachment, who is
No, hombre.
Marcel
Paraso?
Sure, Paraso.
He is one of my oldest friends in Los Angeles who has served as a board member of the Art of Elysium and is one of my biggest confidants here in LA.
È animatissima oggi comunque, non l'ho mai vista così. Mai vista così fino a 30 giorni, mai vista così.
And going down to the third page of this exhibit. Thank you.
E alle strettissime. E alle,
This is an
alle spalle al
email, Ms.
muro.
Howell, that you sent to Whitney Henriquez on or about Tuesday, July 28th, 2020.
Ah, l'ho
at
visto, Ombre,
11:20
sì.
Excuse me, at 11:02 a.m.
It is.
This is a true and accurate copy of an email exchange that you sent to Ms. Henriquez.
Yes, I believe I'm the one who did that. Yes,
And then did you forward this email exchange and the attachments to Marcel Parasal?
yeah, I asked him to keep it for me.
Why did you send this email and letter to Ms. Enriquez?
Because I've struggled
Assolutamente.
very much with what
Nessuno.
to do in a situation that I love someone who I know is doing something very wrong, and I know that they're doing it because they're trying to protect their sister, and I'm trying to protect her, and I'm just trying to get her to wake up and do the right thing, which is tell the truth. That's the only thing that can help everybody involved in this case.
Ms. Howell, do you recall submitting a witness statement in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, they basically just called to verify the witness statement that was submitted previously.
And do you recognize this document to be the witness statement and the declaration that you submitted in the UK? And if you want to scroll down to look at it.
Yes, I recognize it.
Sì, sì.
And at the first page, do you see a date on this document?
January 13th, 2021.
And is this document a true and accurate copy of the declaration that you submitted in the UK proceeding on or about January 13th, 2021?
Yes.
And are all the statements in your UK declaration accurate and true?
I mean, yes, I signed it, yes.
All right, let's pull up what I believe was Depp Exhibit 9. It's been marked as Depp Exhibit 9. Exhibit 9. So, Ms. Howell, earlier you were shown this document.
Scusate.
Scrolling to the end of it.
Can you go? Okay.
There. Did Mr. Waldman assist you in drafting this email?
Absolutely not.
Did you speak with Mr. Waldman at all about drafting this email?
About writing an email? No. I did that on my own accord.
Did you speak with Mr. Waldman at all about contacting the ACLU?
I do not recall having a conversation with him about that.
And Ms. Howell, you testified earlier that you received a check from Fidelity Charitable in January of 2018. Is that correct?
I don't know if I said the date, but yes, I received an anonymous donation from that check that was submitted. Whatever it's on there, I just don't know the date off the top of my head.
And you testified that there was a letter sent along with that that said that it was in honor of Amber Heard?
Yes. Richard, I was guaranteed 20 minutes with him after being attacked for 3.5 hours by your side the last time. So I am going to stick by what I was told before entering this and what your side agreed to.
All right, your next witness.
Your Honor, Mr. Depp calls Candy Davidson Goldbraun, who is the corporate designee of the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles.
Cosa ha detto?
20 minutes with him after being attacked for 3.5 hours by your side the last time. So
that said that it was in honor of Amber Heard?
Non ho capito, non ho
Had any
capito.
payments been made by Miss Heard to the Children's Hospital in connection with the $3.5 million pledge, aside from the original $100,000 check from Mr. White in August of 2016?
Yes, there was an payment, a gift on January 9th of 2018.
And what amount is that gift that you're referring to?
$250,000.
Okay, and was that gift made by Miss Heard or on Miss Heard's behalf?
By Ms. Heard.
Okay, and what are you basing that statement on?
By the check that we received from Fidelity. Fidelity Charity.
Perché parla da un ospedale, Fox. È la responsabile dell'ospedale per l'infanzia di Los Angeles.
The letter to Mr. White from myself,
Personale medico.
inquiring about
Vedete anche che c'è il cartellino attaccato alla giacca qua.
that had not been fulfilled.
And why did you write
Ma non è pazza, ragazzi, ma perché dite che è pazza?
2019?
Ragazzi, ma perché dite che è pazza?
Figure out if there were any other payments coming from
Sta solo dicendo che non sono arrivati 3 milioni e
to
mezzo.
fulfill the pledge because the Children's Hospital Los Angeles.
Ma in ospedale!
Any other correspondence from him?
And what is this document?
È fisicamente dentro l'ospedale!
It is a letter to Ms. Gottlieb from myself on behalf of Children's Hospital Los Angeles.
Marzo 2021, raga!
Additional gifts.
È più di un anno fa.
Payment installment.
This letter appears to be directed to Miss Amber Heard.
Scusate, ma per ste robe è in albero.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Who's Jody Gottlieb?
In the Children's Hospital Los Angeles records, Jody Gottlieb was our contact for Miss Amber Heard.
Vi riassumo la sua testimonianza. Non abbiamo i 3 milioni e mezzo che aveva promesso.
Why did you send this letter to Miss Heard and Miss Gottlieb?
I was trying to see if the pledge was going to be fulfilled
Volevo sapere se facevano...
In
Esatto.
your experience, is it common practice for anonymous donors when making donations to, in one paragraph, state that they wish to remain anonymous, and in the very next paragraph, identify themselves?
Yes,
That is common?
it is common for donors to want to remain anonymous publicly, but allow the charity to know who
Smerdati.
they are.
Between June 2018 and the dates on which you sent the letters to Ms. Hurd and Mr. White in June of 2019, were any additional funds received from Ms. Hurd?
No.
No.
Okay, so as of June 2018, a total of $250,000 had been received as far as the Children's Hospital is concerned from Ms. Hurd. And that was the same amount that had been donated a year later in June of 2019. Is that accurate?
Correct.
As of the date of this deposition,
500k invece di 3 milioni e mezzo.
2021, how much in total has Ms. Hurd donated to the Children's Hospital?
For this particular gift? I mean, in her lifetime?
From 2016 to present.
$250,000.
Ms. Goldburn, you recall we were speaking about this letter a few minutes ago?
Oof.
Correct.
All right, and this was a letter that you sent to Ms. Hurd, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever get a response to this letter?
No.
As of October of 2018, how much
no, la prima donazione era sua, ma non era sua, cioè il check, l'assegno era suo, ma non era effettivamente suo, era solo a nome suo, la seconda era proprio anonima. Sono i soldi di Elon Musk, sono i 500k di Elon Musk.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end of that.
Sorry, I just realized. You said October 2018.
250 a nome suo e poi 250 anonimo dopo una lettera che dichiarava che era Elon Musk, se ho capito bene.
$250,000.
Okay. As of March 30th, 2019, how much money had Ms. Hurd directly donated to the Children's Hospital?
$250,000.
What is your understanding of the length of time over which Ms. Hurd pledged the gift of $3.5 million to Children's Hospital?
There was no date arrangement with Ms. Hurd to have this pledge paid off in a particular time.
If Ms. Hurd were to pay this, the rest of the $3.5 million in 2 years or 5 years, would Children's Hospital welcome that?
CHLA welcomes every and any donation that comes its way.
Has Amber Heard's pledge of the $3.5 million to Children's Hospital expired, to your knowledge?
Not that I'm aware of, no. It's not expired.
All right.
Cazzo vuol dire?
Your next witness, or?
Your Honor, I think we've concluded our witnesses for today. We will have more live witnesses tomorrow.
Okay, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll be the end
Chissà
of the
chi
day for
sono quelli di
today.
domani.
Again, do not do any outside research, do not discuss the case with anybody, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., okay? Thank you.
E noi domani alle 15 saremo qua con un pacco di popcorn formato famiglia, perché sapete cosa succede domani, vero? Domani rivediamo Kate Moss, seguita da... È normale che ci siano in Italia le domande, sono le obiezioni accolte. Domani c'è Kate Moss, seguita di nuovo dalla dottoressa Curry, seguita da Johnny.
All right. You want to have
Sentiamo
a
il
seat for just a
tempo.
moment, because we do have a few proffers going to be done. Just for the record, we talked about it earlier, I will charge the 30 minutes extra time for today to the plaintiff's team, so we can stay on time.
Understood, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, and I believe, Mr. Rodenborn, you had some proffers you wanted to do for testimony.
We did,
for
Your
the
Honor's
record.
testimony in a few exhibits. Mr. Nadelhoff is actually going to
Okay, Mr. Nadelhoff, if you want to proffer testimony for the record as to the testimony that the court has sustained objections.
Cioè va lui?
Here, Your Honor, it's a box here, so I just...
Okay, that's fine, you can stay there as long as you stay close to the microphone, I appreciate it.
Testimonia lui?
And Your Honor, what I will do is I'll explain what we're proffering the evidence for, and then we have copies.
Good.
Which I'll provide to you. We'll provide them to you electronically, or I don't have another copy for you right now, but we'll provide them.
That's fine. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, for Laurel Anderson on March 31st, 2022.
Ma la giuria è andata via?
Sì, vero. Deposition testimony for trial. Dr. Laurel Anderson, a clinical psychologist who worked with Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp. Dr. Anderson testified in the therapy session. Ms. Heard reported to her that she was slapped by Mr. Depp, that he hit her in the head, had her hair pulled by Mr. Depp, kicked her in the leg, and that Mr. Depp gave Ms. Heard bruises. Ms. Heard also reported that Mr. Depp was the first to initiate any violence. Ms. Heard also reported that she hid in a bathroom to protect herself from Mr. Depp. Ms. Heard also reported to Dr. Anderson that Mr. Depp threw a phone at her on May 21st, 2016, hit her and held her hair. Ms. Heard also reported to Dr. Anderson that she was a victim to Mr. Depp's abuse. The testimony is contained in Dr. Anderson's deposition transcript, which is Exhibit A. The court also excluded records of Dr. Anderson from Ms. Heard's and Mr. Depp's therapy sessions and treatment summary, which are Exhibits B and C. Mr. Depp objected to Dr. Anderson's testimony as described in medical records, stating that they were hearsay and that they did not fall into any exceptions, including statements for purposes of medical treatment. The court sustained the objection on the grounds that the testimony and exhibits were hearsay. For Dr. Kipper, on March 31st, 2022, the defendant attempted to designate certain portions of the deposition testimony for trial of Dr. David Kipper, Mr. Depp's physician. Dr. Kipper testified Ms. Heard voiced concerns of Mr. Depp's behavior while on drugs and alcohol, that Mr. Depp tried to fight and push Ms. Heard while he was attempting detox on his island.
Cazzo, veramente, ma è più di una risma sta
lots of
roba.
cocaine in February 2016. Dr. Kipper also testified he told Mr. Depp to, quote, bury the dragon, which referred to the bad feelings that Mr. Depp has inside him. This testimony is contained in Dr. Kipper's deposition transcript, which is Exhibit D. Dr. Kipper also testified about an email he wrote explaining Mr. Depp's detox treatment. In the email, Dr. Kipper wrote to Mr.
Ma non ho
Depp's
capito
sister
cosa
that
stanno
Mr. Depp had
facendo.
fundamental issues with anger, romanticized the drug culture, and had no patience if his needs were not met. This email is Exhibit C. Exhibit E. Mr. Depp objected to Dr. Kipper's testimony and the email stating it was hearsay, that it did not fall into any
Non hanno
exceptions,
stampato
including statements
fronte
for
retro.
purposes of medical treatment. The court sustained the objection on the ground that the testimony and exhibits were hearsay. Deborah Lloyd. On March 31st, 2022, the defendant attempted to designate certain portions of the deposition testimony for trial of Debbie Lloyd.
Non ho capito cosa cercano di fare.
Ms. Lloyd testified Ms. Heard voiced concerns about Mr. Depp's behavior while on drugs and alcohol, and that Mr. Depp worked himself up into a rage and was trying to fight Ms. Heard while he was attempting detox on his island. This testimony is contained in Ms. Lloyd's deposition transcript, which is Exhibit F. Also, Ms. Lloyd kept nursing notes on these issues that she testified to, which is Exhibit G. Mr. Depp objected to Ms. Lloyd's testimony and portions of the nursing notes, stating it was hearsay that did not fall into any exceptions, including statements for purposes of medical treatment. The court sustained the objection on the ground that the testimony and portions of the nursing notes were hearsay. Aaron Borum Falati. On March 31st and April 1st,
Questo tempo hanno detto che glielo tolgono a loro. Loro hanno accettato di regalare agli altri mezz'ora per questa roba qua.
Ms. Falati, Ms. Heard's, and Mr. Depp's nurse. Ms. Falati testified that Ms. Heard
Stan piangendo,
reported to her
capito?
on December 16th, 2015, that Mr. Depp headbutted Ms. Heard in the forehead. This also was contained in Ms. Falati's nursing notes, which is Exhibit H. Ms. Falati further testified that Ms. Heard reported being freaked out after the December 2015 incident and testified to text messages between herself and Ms. Heard, where Ms. Heard reported the incident of abuse. These text messages are Exhibits I, J, K, L, and M.
M, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, 12-21.
2016, Ms. Heard reported that Mr. Depp became completely delusional and crazed and hit Ms. Heard in the face while she was on the phone with I.O. Tillett Wright. Ms. Falati testified to text messages reporting this as well, which are contained in Exhibit N.
Combinazione, è sempre successo tutto quando potevano testimoniare gli amici di parte,
Mr. Depp objected to Ms. Falati's testimony, portions of the nursing notes and the text messages referenced stating it was hearsay that did not fall into any exceptions, including statements for purposes of medical
Ma
treatment.
figurati, Alan.
The court sustained the objection.
Hanno ancora più ore che giorni a
Portions of
disposizione.
the nursing notes and the text messages were hearsay. Amy Banks, Dr. Amy Banks. On April 29th, 2022, the defendant attempted to designate certain portions of the deposition testimony for trial of Dr. Amy Banks, a clinical psychologist and relationship consultant who worked with Ms. Heard and Ms.
Dormi Johnny, ti diciamo quando è finito tutto.
That in therapy sessions, Ms. Heard reported that Mr. Depp attacked her physically, including by hitting her with his hand. Dr. Banks also testified that Ms. Heard reported that Mr. Depp cut his finger off and burned himself with a cigarette. Dr. Banks also reported that Ms. Heard told her that Mr. Depp initiated the violence while in a session with Mr.
buchi
Depp.
sanguinamenti pesanti, botte da orbi. Non vedo l'ora che sia domani un tizio.
Ms. Heard's accounts of the violence and that Ms. Heard was a victim of
Oh
domestic
bro,
abuse.
it's a prank!
This testimony is contained in Dr. Banks's deposition transcript, which is Exhibit P. Mr. Depp objected to Dr. Banks' testimony, saying it was hearsay that did not fall into any exceptions, including statements for purposes of medical treatment and for providing improper expert opinion.
Ho visto il pugno che c'era per l'abbiocco.
Testimony about the abuse was hearsay, and that Dr. Banks' testimony that Ms. Heard was a victim of domestic abuse was improper expert opinion. Connell Cowan. On April 29th, 2022, the defendant attempted to designate certain portions of the deposition testimony for trial of Dr. Connell Cowan, a clinical psychologist who worked with Ms. Heard. Dr. Cowan testified that in the therapy session, Ms. Heard reported abuse by Mr. Depp, including text messages and medical notes, where Ms. Heard reported in December 2015 that, quote, Johnny did a number on me, end quote. This testimony is contained in Dr. Cowan's deposition transcript, which is Exhibit Q. It is also contained in Dr. Cowan's medical notes in Exhibit R, 9122 through 23, and is contained in text messages that are Exhibits S and T. Mr. Depp objected to Dr. Cowan's testimony, stating it was hearsay that did not fall into any exceptions, including statements for purposes of medical treatment. The court sustained the objections on the ground that the testimony about the abuse was hearsay. Alan Blaustein. On April 29th, 2022, the defendant attempted to designate portions of the deposition testimony for trial of Dr. Alan Blaustein, a clinical psychologist who worked with Mr. Depp. Dr. Blaustein testified that in the therapy sessions, Mr. Depp reported that he had cut himself as a child and burned himself with cigarettes. Dr. Blaustein also testified about the drugs that Mr. Depp was on, as reported to him by Ms. Lloyd. This testimony is contained in Dr. Blaustein's deposition transcript, which is Exhibit U. This information was also contained in emails, which are Exhibits V, W, and X.
Adesso fa come i cani, inizia a correre nel sonno.
Testimony regarding the cutting and burning himself is speculation, and the testimony regarding the drugs Mr. Depp was taking is hearsay that did not fall into any exceptions, including statements for purposes of medical treatment.
Manca poco.
Sustain the objections.
Non mollare.
Bonnie Jacobs. On May 4th, 2022, the defendant attempted to introduce into evidence the treatment notes of Dr. Bonnie Jacobs, a clinical psychologist who worked with Ms. Heard. The treatment notes show Ms. Heard reporting abuse by Mr. Depp, including sexual violence. The treatment notes are Exhibit Y, and based on the court's ruling, the defendant did not call Bonnie Jacobs as a witness. Mr. Depp objected to Dr. Jacobs' notes as hearsay that did not fall into any exceptions, including statements for purposes of medical treatment. The court sustained the objections on those grounds.
Bene. Johnny. Oh, Johnny.
As long as you don't just keep turning every page in that book.
No,
I'm not staying for that.
It is not.
Okay.
Oh, sta ascoltando! Ma quest'uomo è... Ah, è in modalità risparmio energetico solo. È in modalità risparmio energetico. Ho capito tutto adesso.
The UK judgment. On April 29, 2022, Ms. Heard moved to allow evidence and questioning regarding the UK judgment and for admission of the judgment itself, which is Exhibit Z. In support for her motion, Ms. Heard argued that Mr. Depp had opened the door to the admission of the judgment by presenting
buongiorno, Stellina.
after the date of the judgment on November 2nd, 2020. For example, Ms. Heard observed that
Ha deciso che non ne vale la pena.
damages for losing his role in Pirates of the Caribbean 6, a movie that had not yet been made. Ms. Heard further observed that Mr. Depp testified that the op-ed had caused him and his family irreparable harm, thereby suggesting that his reputational harm had continued to the present. Ms. Heard noted that Mr. Depp's expert designation indicated Michael Spindler relied on Mr. Depp's earnings from 2019 to 2021 when reaching his opinion, which resulted in the
Esatto,
amendment to
Kempo.
designation.
Esatto.
Ultimately, the court found that Mr. Depp had
È
not
proprio
fulfilled
un
the
uomo
obligations
medio
of
di
the
50 e
judgment
passa
and
anni.
overruled the motion, which the court did again today with Mr. Bagna's opinions.
Quanti Faldonia?
Adam Bercovici, on May 19th, 2022, Ms. Heard attempted to call Adam Bercovici, who is an expert in the policing and Los Angeles Police Department policing of domestic violence calls for service. Mr. Bercovici would have testified to his qualifications in the field of policing and LAPD policing of domestic violence calls for service as follows, and further outlined in Ms. Heard's fourth supplemental and rebuttal disclosures dated March 31st, 2022. Mr. Bercovici spent 30 years with the LAPD, retiring in 2012 at the rank of lieutenant. He has extensive experience as a patrol officer, field supervisor,
Johnny.
uniformed watch commander, both as sergeant,
Tutto
second,
bene.
lieutenant one,
Bentornato.
multiple assignments as an officer in charge, lieutenant second of specialized detective units. During his tenure with the LAPD, Mr. Bercovici held numerous positions
Johnny, non andare di nuovo.
directly responding to and overseeing subordinate
Ma chi
officers
cazzo lo
responses to
ascolta?
domestic violence calls for service, including as a patrol officer, supervisor, watch commander, and assistant watch
Sì,
commander.
Allanon.
And actually, this, Your Honor, is the person who prepared this
Johnny,
a longer
Johnny,
what he
devi
said. I
alzarti.
can- Is it okay to just submit it rather than me read it all?
Any objection to that?
È finito, Johnny.
And with that,
Okay, you just give me the size of that.
No,
just wanna know.
I understand.
Okay, all right, that's fine. If you can get Jamie our copy of it, we'll make sure it becomes
course,
part
sir.
of the record as well,
Thank
okay? All right, do you have any proffers, Mr. Chu, that you need to, at this point?
Not at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right.
Oh,
And I think there's just a couple things I need from you, like tomorrow, let me, by the end of the day tomorrow, if I could get clean jury instructions without the cites on them for the ones that have been admitted, and also the verdict forms as well, if that's been worked out, okay?
Your Honor, we sent revised jury instructions to them yesterday morning and a revised verdict form today, so just waiting to hear
Okay,
back. But
sure.
We'll coordinate.
All right, thank you. And you're working with Jamie about some exhibits. There's some that were, both sides noted that were in evidence that are not, so I want to make sure everybody gets everything cleared up. You're caught up? Okay, good. All right, just keep that going so we can get that, make sure that's taken care of. As far as time left, Sammy, today, I can give you a rough estimate for two reasons. One, you had some depositions, so make sure you give the breakdowns to Sammy about those. And two, Sammy wasn't here today. He had a mandatory CLE that he had to do, so I just did a rough estimate, and I want to qualify that as a rough estimate. But it looks like the plaintiff has used about 5 hours today, and the defendant used about 1 hour and 15 minutes, is what I have, okay? And again, that's a rough estimate, so don't expect them to
Lo
be the
finiscono.
same, but Sammy's going to get to
Hanno
it this
3
evening and
ore
send you,
loro e 10 loro,
with the
giusto?
actual accurate times, okay? Anything else?
No, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right.
No, Your Honor.
Okay,
Thank you.
have a good evening. We'll see you in the morning.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Comunque la vera eroina di tutta questa storia è lei, la santa donna che si è ascoltata tutto e l'ha trascritto sempre. Dai Johnny, andiamo a casa, va? Saluta tutti, saluta, bella, ciao, bella, bella, ciao, ciao signor giudice, bella, grazie. Birretta, mo che torniamo. Allora. Nah, non penso, Gero. Io ho l'impressione che gran parte della testimonianza Johnny la dona, secondo me. Se vince, dona tipo 14 milioni, cioè che era quello che avrebbe donato direttamente, secondo me. possibile. Si riprende tutti i soldi del divorzio e dice, ah sì, mo te li dono io. Comunque, oggi hanno testimoniato persone di calibro 20 mm e hanno smontato tutte le testimonianze degli esperti di ieri, distruggendole una per una. Domani ci aspettiamo Kate Moss, Dr. Curry e di nuovo Johnny Depp. L'accusa dovrebbe avere ancora una decina di ore. Non so se giovedì fanno qualcosa o no. Sono sicuro che però appunto domani devono fare questo e venerdì hanno le arringhe finali. Ma venerdì abbiamo anche l'Evasion. Evasion, se non sbaglio, inizia alle 18, quindi potrebbe essere che non riesco a seguirmi le arringhe. Nel caso io non riesca a seguirmi le arringhe, piuttosto ci facciamo una stream straordinaria, la recuperiamo il prima possibile. Non so se sabato pomeriggio, sabato sera, domenica pomeriggio, insomma, in qualche modo vi prometto che la recuperiamo. Anche se aspetta un attimo, questa domenica è il 29, ho la gara di PRS, ok. Quindi forse questa domenica non riesco... Vabbè, insomma, in qualche modo vi prometto che le recuperiamo, perché siamo arrivati fino qua, perderci le arringhe finali sarebbe un peccato. Ora, sono le 23:11 ed è il momento di passare a squad per un paio d'ore, 2 ore e mezza di divertimento e di rilassatezza. Quindi, adesso, come per tutti gli altri giorni, io sto per staccare la stream e staccare la registrazione per YouTube. Riavvio la stream rapidamente, non andate da nessuna parte, passiamo a squad. Nico, grazie dei 2 mesi. E vi faccio anche l'ending screen, visto che purtroppo me lo dimentico sempre. Mi rendo conto che tutti quelli che sabbano, donano, eccetera, non hanno il loro ending stream, perché interrompendo brutalmente la stream, poi il secondo pezzo ha solo il supporto del secondo pezzo. Per cui vi faccio comunque l'ending screen, ma non vado da nessuna parte. Per chi di voi è rimasto qua solo per il processo, vi lascio appuntamento a domani alle 15. Mi raccomando, non mancate, perché domani cadono le bombe grosse. Grazie dell'attenzione. Ending screen. Chiudo e riparte la stream con squad.